Blood stained the silk of her dress, not from champagne, not from accidents, but from hands that refused to hear the word no. Lily Dawson crouched in a storage room while Manhattan's elite danced floors above, her breath shallow, her body screaming. She had two choices: speak the truth and lose everything, or bury it deep and survive another day. But when Victor Hale, the man whose very name made powerful men flinch, opened that door and saw her broken face, the choice was ripped from her hands. What happened next would shatter lives, topple empires, and ignite something neither of them could control. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far Lily's story travels. The champagne flutes caught the light like tiny prisms, scattering fragments of gold across the ballroom floor. Lily Dawson moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her clipboard pressed against her chest like armor, her smile fixed and professional. The Metropolitan Art Gala was the event of the season. Senators, CEOs, old money dripping from crystal chandeliers and newer money trying desperately to blend in. She'd coordinated every detail for months. The orchid centerpieces flown in from Ecuador, the string quartet that cost more than her yearly salary, the precise choreography of waitstaff moving like shadows through designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Nobody looked at her. Not really. She was part of the machinery, the background, the help. Exactly how she needed it to be. Lily. Her boss, Margaret Chen, appeared at her elbow, immaculate in black Armani, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. The Vanderbilt party needs their private room refreshed. Quickly. On it. Lily was already moving, heels clicking against marble as she navigated toward the East Wing. The Vanderbilt 5YP suite. She'd prepared it herself earlier, but wealthy guests had specific ideas about what comfortable meant. Probably wanted the champagne colder, the lighting softer, the world precisely arranged to their liking. The corridor outside the ballroom was quieter, the music fading to a pleasant hum. Lily's reflection flickered in the gilt-framed mirrors lining the walls. 26 years old, dark hair pulled into a sensible bun, minimal makeup, a figure hidden beneath the shapeless black uniform all event staff wore. Invisible, forgettable, safe. She pushed open the door to the VIP suite and froze. Ryan Caldwell stood by the bar, his bow tie loosened, his jacket discarded on a velvet chair. Not alone. She'd expected a whole party. Just him. His eyes tracked her entry with the lazy confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything in his life. 30-something, trust fund golden, that particular brand of handsome that came from generations of genetic selection and expensive orthodontia. Oh. Lily's hand tightened on her clipboard. I'm sorry, I thought. Margaret said the room needed refreshing. I can come back. No need. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I asked her to send someone. Specifically requested you, actually. Warning bells. Distant but clear. Lily had been in this industry long enough to recognize the tone, the look, the deliberate blocking of the exit. She kept her expression neutral, professional. Is there something you need? I can have bottles sent up, or close the door. I really should keep it open. Fire codes. Close the door. Not a request anymore. The smile had vanished entirely. Lily's throat went dry. She thought of her mother, 3 floors up in a hospital bed across town, insurance maxed out, medical bills stacking like cordwood. She thought of this job, the best she'd ever had, the only thing keeping them afloat. She thought of all the times she'd swallowed her pride, endured wandering hands and inappropriate comments, survived by staying small and quiet, and utterly, completely invisible. Mr. Caldwell, I have other responsibilities. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. His hand caught her wrist, fingers crushing, and Lily's clipboard clattered to the floor. The world narrowed to his breath on her face, whiskey sour and hot, to the pressure of his grip and the sickening realization that she'd miscalculated, that this wasn't just uncomfortable. This was dangerous. You know who my father is? His voice dropped to something intimate and vicious. You know what happens to people who embarrass my family? Please. The word escaped before she could stop it. Please, I'll scream. Scream? He laughed, actually laughed, Sweetheart, these walls are soundproofed. That's the whole point of VIP rooms. Privacy. What happened next blurred into fragments. His other hand fisting in her hair. Her knee coming up, connecting with nothing because he'd anticipated it. Because men like him had done this before. The sharp crack of her head against the wall. His weight, crushing. The taste of copper in her mouth. Her nails raking across his face. Finally drawing blood. And his backhand splitting her lip open. Then the door opening. Voices, sharp and commanding. Security? Someone from the event? Ryan released her so suddenly she crumpled against the wall, gasping, and when she looked up through the haze of pain, two men in dark suits were pulling him backward. Professional, efficient, not security, something else. The fuck? Ryan started, but one of the men leaned in and whispered something that made all the color drain from his face. They escorted him out. The door clicked shut. Silence rushed in like water filling a sinking ship. Lily's hands shook so violently she couldn't stand. Blood dripped from her split lip onto her uniform. Her scalp throbbed where he'd yanked her hair. Her wrist was already swelling, fingerprint bruises blooming purple-black against her skin. She needed to move, needed to get out, needed to report this or run or something, but her legs refused to cooperate. The storage room. The thought came from somewhere deep in her survival instinct. There was a storage room 3 doors down, where they kept extra linens and supplies. Small, dark, safe. She crawled more than walked, leaving her clipboard behind, not caring about the smears she was probably leaving on the marble. The storage room door was blessedly unlocked. She pulled herself inside, shut the door, and finally, let the sob building in her chest break free. It came out silent. She'd learned a long time ago how to cry without making sound. Time stopped meaning anything. 5 minutes or 50, she couldn't tell. She tried to assess the damage with shaking fingers, lips split, but not badly, bruises forming, nothing broken that she could feel. Fixable. Hideable. She could clean up in the staff bathroom, tell Margaret she felt sick, slip out the service entrance. Nobody would know. Nobody had to know. The door opened. Lily's head snapped up, terror flooding fresh and sharp. But it wasn't Ryan. It wasn't security. It was a man she'd seen exactly twice before. Both times from across crowded rooms, both times preceded by a wave of sudden tension that rippled through every important person in his vicinity. Victor Hale. Even in the dim emergency lighting of a storage room, he was striking. Not handsome in the conventional sense. His features were too sharp, too severe, carved from something harder than ordinary bone. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been 30 or 50. It was impossible to tell. But his eyes, pale gray, unsettlingly calm, fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the shelves of linens behind her. He didn't say anything, just looked at her, huddled on the floor, blood on her face, uniform torn at the shoulder, one shoe missing. "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. "Just needed a minute. I'll get back to work." Victor Hale stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The storage room was small. His presence made it feel microscopic. He crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level, and Lily found herself unable to look away. "Who?" His voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it, something else vibrated, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "Nobody. I fell. It's clumsy. I should have been more careful. Lily Dawson." He said her name like he'd known it for years, not like he'd read it off a guest list somewhere. Event coordinator, 3 years with Chen Premier Events. Mother in Mount Sinai Hospital, stage 3 treatment. Scholarship to NYU, graduated summa cum laude. Currently living in a rent-controlled studio in Astoria and taking subway transfers that add 40 minutes to your commute because you can't afford the direct route. The blood drained from her face. I make it my business to know who's in my building during events I attend." He paused, those gray eyes tracking the bruises forming on her wrist, the blood drying on her chin. "I'll ask once more. Who?" And Lily realized with sudden crystalline clarity that this man wasn't asking out of concern or kindness. This was something else entirely. This was a predator assessing another predator's territory. "Why do you care?" The question came out sharper than she intended, fear bleeding into anger. "I'm nobody. I clean up after your parties and make sure your champagne stays cold. What happens to me doesn't matter to people like you." Something flickered across his face, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. "You're correct that it shouldn't matter." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a silk pocket square, pristine white, handed it to her. "But it does." His name. Her fingers closed around the fabric automatically. It was softer than anything she'd ever touched. "If I tell you, I lose my job. Margaret will fire me for causing a scene, and even if she doesn't, his family will make sure I never work in this city again. My mother needs her treatment. I can't risk it." "You think you're risking something by telling me." Victor's head tilted slightly, studying her. "You're risking considerably more by protecting him. Men like whoever did this, they don't stop. They escalate. Men like him have fathers who own buildings and judges and newspaper editors." Lily pressed the pocket square to her bleeding lip, tasting salt and expensive cologne. "Men like him don't face consequences. Men like him win." "They do," Victor agreed. "Usually." The way he said it made her pause. There was something in his tone, not comfort, not reassurance, but certainty. Mathematical. Final. Ryan Caldwell. The name escaped before she could stop it, before she could think about the implications, or the fallout, or anything except the sudden, overwhelming exhaustion of carrying the secret alone. "The Caldwell Group's heir. He asked Margaret to send me to his VIP room. He locked the door. I tried to leave and he—" Her voice cracked. "He said the rooms were soundproofed, that nobody would hear me scream." Victor's expression didn't change. That was somehow more terrifying than if he'd reacted with anger or disgust. His face remained perfectly, utterly calm. But his eyes, something shifted there, something cold and patient and absolutely inevitable, like winter settling over a landscape. "I see." He stood in one fluid motion, then extended a hand to her. "Can you walk?" "Yes, but I need to get back." "You're going home." Not a suggestion. "My driver will take you. Your supervisor will be informed you became ill. Your salary will continue without interruption." "I can't accept." "You can. You will." He was still holding out his hand, waiting. "The alternative is you attempt to finish this event with a concussion and visible injuries, which will raise questions you've already indicated you can't afford to answer. Let me simplify your evening, Ms. Dawson." She stared at his outstretched hand. Steady, certain, offering something she didn't understand but desperately needed, a way out of this room, this night, this moment where everything had shattered. Lily placed her hand in his and let him pull her to her feet. Her head swam. Victor's grip shifted immediately, his other hand coming to her elbow, steadying her. This close, she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker, more complex. Could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. "Easy." His voice had gentled, just slightly. "When did you last eat?" "This morning. Coffee." She laughed, a brittle sound. "Breakfast of champions." Disapproval, subtle but clear. He guided her toward the door, moving at her pace. "My driver's name is James. He'll ensure you reach home safely. I'll have food sent to your apartment within the hour." You don't have to." "I'm aware I don't have to do anything, Ms. Dawson." They'd reached the corridor. Lily expected him to release her, to hand her off to some assistant, but he kept his hand at her elbow, steering her away from the ballroom's noise and lights. Toward a service elevator she'd used dozens of times, but never imagined she'd share with someone like Victor Hale. "I'm choosing to. There's a difference." The elevator doors opened, empty. Victor guided her inside and pressed the button for the ground-level parking garage. As the doors slid shut, sealing them in, Lily caught their reflection in the polished brass. Her, disheveled and bloodied and small, him, immaculate and calm and radiating controlled power. "Why?" The question came out as a whisper. Victor didn't pretend to misunderstand. He was quiet for a long moment, watching the floor numbers descend. Then, "I have a sister. Had. Past tense." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She was 23 when someone decided her worth was less than his temporary desires. The man who did it faced no consequences. His family was well connected. Powerful. The sort of people who make problems disappear. Lily's breath caught. I'm sorry. Don't be. The elevator chimed softly as they reached the parking level. She survived. Thrived even. Built a life away from our world. But I learned something important that year. The doors opened onto a concrete expanse filled with luxury vehicles. A black Mercedes waited near the elevator, engine running, a uniformed driver at attention. I learned that power without purpose is just noise, and I learned that some debts can only be paid in very specific currency. He walked her to the car. The driver, James, presumably, opened the rear door without a word, his expression professionally neutral even as his eyes took in her appearance. Home address? Victor asked. She gave it, her voice steadier now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a strange numbness. Victor relayed the information to James, then turned back to her. You'll hear from me tomorrow, he said. Not about work, about other matters. What matters? His smile was brief, cold, and didn't reach his eyes. Ensuring tonight's events are properly addressed. Rest, Ms. Dawson. Eat. Lock your door. I'll handle everything else. Before she could respond, he stepped back and James closed the door. The Mercedes pulled away smoothly, leaving Victor Hale standing alone in the parking garage, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Through the tinted rear window, Lily watched him until they turned a corner and he disappeared from view. Only then did she let herself shake, really shake, the adrenaline finally crashing through her system. She pressed Victor's pocket square to her mouth, still bleeding, still trembling, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. A powerful man had found her broken, had asked for a name, had promised to handle things. She should feel relieved, grateful even. Instead, as the car merged into Manhattan traffic, Lily felt something else entirely. The creeping certainty that she'd just set something in motion she couldn't possibly understand or control. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning, tiny, cluttered with medical bills and textbooks she still couldn't bring herself to throw away, smelling faintly of the vanilla candle she burned to cover the mildew. Lily locked the door behind her, engaged the deadbolt, and made it exactly 3 steps before her legs gave out. She sat on the floor and cried properly this time. Loud, ugly sobs that tore from somewhere deep in her chest. For her mother, sleeping in a hospital bed across town, blissfully unaware. For herself, and the invisible target she'd apparently been wearing all night. For the version of her that had walked into the Vanderbilt VIP room expecting nothing worse than entitled rudeness. Her phone buzzed. Margaret. Heard you felt ill. Feel better. We'll discuss tomorrow. Not concerned, not sympathetic, just the vague threat of a discussion that would probably end with her termination, because that's how these things worked. The victim became the problem, the inconvenience, the liability. Another buzz. Unknown number. Food will arrive in 10 minutes. Eat, sleep. Tomorrow will clarify many things. VH. Lily stared at the message. How did he have her number? How did he know her address beyond what he'd told his driver? How much did Victor Hale actually know about her life? 10 minutes later, precisely, someone knocked. Lily checked the peephole. A delivery person from a restaurant she'd walked past 100 times but never dreamed of entering. The kind of place where appetizers cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She accepted 3 bags of food through the barely open door, tipped with the only cash she had in her wallet, and spread the containers across her coffee table. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, some kind of grain she didn't recognize, fresh bread that was still warm, a bottle of water, and, she laughed despite everything, a chocolate mousse. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her body demanding fuel her mind couldn't appreciate. When she finished, she took the hottest shower her ancient water heater could manage, scrubbing until her skin turned pink, until the water ran clear of blood and tears and the ghost of Ryan Caldwell's cologne. In bed, staring at her ceiling's water stains, Lily tried to sleep. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ryan's face, felt his hands, heard his laugh. But underneath that, woven through it like a dark thread, was Victor Hale's voice. Tomorrow will clarify many things. What did that mean? What could he possibly do? Ryan's father owned half of Manhattan's commercial real estate. The Caldwell Group had lawyers on retainer who'd made murder charges disappear. Victor was powerful, yes, The whispers about the Hale family suggested connections that ran deep and cold through the city's infrastructure, but even he couldn't just make someone like Ryan Caldwell face consequences. Could he? Lily's phone buzzed again. 2:47 a.m. She almost didn't check it. Margaret. Emergency meeting, office, 8 a.m. Attendance mandatory. Her stomach dropped. This was it. The firing she'd been expecting. Probably Ryan had called in a favor, made up some story about her being unstable or inappropriate, or another message. Victor Hale. Don't go to that meeting. Call in sick. Trust me. She sat up, heart pounding. How did he know about the meeting? Was he monitoring her messages? Her breath came short and fast, panic rising. This was wrong. This was all wrong. She'd made a terrible mistake trusting him, giving him Ryan's name. What if Victor wasn't trying to help? What if he was something worse, something she'd been too desperate and broken to see clearly? I know you're afraid. Another message, appearing as she stared at the screen. You should be, but not of me. Call in sick. Stay home. Watch the news. Everything is already in motion. What's in motion? She typed with shaking fingers. What did you do? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Justice. In the only language men like Ryan Caldwell understand. Then nothing. Lily called him. Straight to voicemail. She typed another message, then deleted it. Tried again. Deleted that too. Finally, as the sky outside her window began to lighten from black to gray, she sent, If you've done something that will hurt my mother's care, if you've made things worse, I will never forgive you. The response came immediately. Your mother's care is secure. Forever. Sleep, Lily. And somehow, impossibly, she did. She woke to her phone ringing. Noon. 6 missed calls from Margaret, 3 from unknown numbers, 2 voicemails. Her head throbbed, her lip was swollen, and her wrist had turned a spectacular shade of purple-black. The voicemail from Margaret was brief and cold. You're terminated, effective immediately. Don't come in for your things. They'll be mailed. Lily sat in her bed, still wearing yesterday's underwear and an old NYU shirt, and waited for the panic to hit, for the terror of unemployment, of losing her mother's insurance, of everything she'd sacrificed and endured collapsing in a single morning. It didn't come. Instead, she felt nothing, a strange, hollow calm. She checked the news on her phone, local stations first, then national. Nothing. Then a breaking news alert. Multiple missing persons reports filed in Manhattan. Police investigating disappearances of 5 men. Her hands went numb. She clicked the link. Read with growing disbelief. 5 men, all from prominent families, all last seen at or leaving the Metropolitan Art Gala last night, including, her breath stopped, Ryan Caldwell. No signs of struggle. No ransom demands. Just gone. Security footage from the building showed them leaving, getting into separate cars, driving away, and then nothing. 5 men disappeared between midnight and dawn. Her phone rang. Victor Hale. She answered without thinking. What did you do? Good afternoon, Ms. Dawson. His voice was warm, almost pleasant, like they were discussing lunch plans, not multiple missing persons. I trust you slept well? What did you do? I addressed a problem. Papers rustled in the background. Several problems, actually. It came to my attention that Mr. Caldwell's behavior last night was not anomalous. There were others, 4 others to be precise, with remarkably similar patterns. I took steps. Steps? Her voice rose. They're missing. The police will find nothing. Certainty, absolute and calm. Because there's nothing to find. No bodies. No crime scenes, no evidence of foul play, just 5 men who decided simultaneously that they had pressing business elsewhere. Lily's mouth went dry. You're lying. You have to be lying. You can't just make 5 people disappear without... I can. A pause. I did. And before you spiral further into panic, let me be very clear. Those men are alive. Uncomfortable, perhaps. Their circumstances significantly reduced from what they're accustomed to, but alive. Where? That's not your concern. His tone gentled slightly. Your concern is your mother's next treatment cycle, which begins Monday at Mount Sinai under Dr. Richardson, the best in her field. Your concern is the direct deposit that will appear in your account this afternoon, covering 6 months of living expenses. Your concern is deciding whether you'd like to continue in event coordination or explore other career paths. I have connections in several industries. She couldn't breathe. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. This is insane. You've committed... I don't even know what you've committed, but it's... Justice, Victor interrupted, his voice hardening. I committed justice. Those 5 men have assaulted, harassed, or raped a combined total of 17 women over the past decade. 17. Some were paid off. Some were threatened into silence. All of them were buried under the weight of money and power and family connections. Until last night. Lily pressed her free hand to her mouth, fighting nausea. You could report me, Victor continued, conversational now. Go to the police. Tell them everything. They'd investigate. Maybe they'd even bring me in for questioning, but we both know how that would end. I'd walk out the same day. And you... He let the implication hang. Are you threatening me? No. He sounded almost offended. I'm explaining reality. I'm also offering you a choice. Take what I'm giving you, your mother's health, your financial security, your freedom from fear, or reject it. Refuse the money. Refuse the help. Continue struggling knowing that Ryan Caldwell and men like him are still out there, still hunting, still winning. That's not a choice. It's exactly a choice. And it's more than those 17 women were given. His voice softened again, that strange gentleness returning. I'm not asking you to be grateful, Lily. I'm not asking you to understand or approve. I'm simply telling you that the threat to you is over, permanently. What you do with that freedom is entirely your decision. The line went quiet. Not dead. She could hear him breathing, could hear the faint sounds of an office in the background. Waiting. I need to think, she whispered finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. A pause. For what it's worth, you were right about one thing. What? You are nobody to people like me. Or you were. But you walked into that storage room broken and bleeding and still thinking about your job, your mother, your responsibilities. You prioritized everyone else's needs above your own safety. That kind of strength. He trailed off. That kind of strength is rarer than you think, especially in my world. He hung up before she could respond. Lily sat in her bed, surrounded by yesterday's clothes and half-empty takeout containers, and tried to process what had just happened. 5 men gone. Her mother's treatment secured. Her job gone, but her finances mysteriously stable. And Victor Hale, the cold, feared heir to some empire she didn't fully understand, had just upended her entire life in less than 12 hours. She should call the police, obviously. This was kidnapping at minimum, possibly worse. She should report him, distance herself, pretend last night never happened. Instead, she pulled up her bank account on her phone. The deposit was there, more money than she'd made in 6 months. The memo line read simply, breathing room. Her mother's hospital portal showed an update. Treatment plan revised, all costs covered by Hale Medical Foundation charitable grant, no patient responsibility. Lily put her phone down and stared at her hands. The bruises on her wrist were already fading to yellow-green at the edges. Her lip had stopped bleeding. In a week, maybe 2, there'd be no physical evidence that last night had ever happened. But she would remember. Would always remember the sound of the VIP room door locking, the weight of Ryan's hand in her hair, the copper taste of blood. And she would remember Victor Hale, crouching in a storage room, asking for a name with eyes like winter. Men like him win, she'd said. Usually, he'd agreed. Outside her window, Manhattan hummed with its usual chaos. Sirens, car horns, the rumble of the subway beneath her building. The city moving forward, indifferent to 5 missing men or one invisible event coordinator whose world had just tilted on its axis. Lily Dawson pulled her laptop into her lap and opened the news again. Read every article about the disappearances. Studied the photos of the missing men, Ryan's privileged smirk, the other's similar expressions of untouchable confidence. Then she opened a new tab and searched Victor Hale. The results were surprisingly sparse. A few mentions in business journals. Board memberships. Charitable foundations. Nothing scandalous, nothing concrete, just whispers in the margins about influence and reach and the kind of power that didn't need to advertise itself. One article from 5 years ago caught her eye. Hale family matriarch dies in apparent suicide. Investigation closed. She clicked, read. Felt something cold settle in her chest. Elena Hale, Victor's sister, 23 years old, found in her apartment, overdose, ruled self-inflicted. The investigation had lasted less than a week. I learned that power without purpose is just noise, Victor had said. And I learned that some debts can only be paid in very specific currency. Lily closed her laptop and lay back on her bed, stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out who she was now, in this world where monsters disappeared overnight, and powerful men offered protection with strings she couldn't quite see. Her phone buzzed one more time. Victor Hale. No strings, no obligations, just a chance to breathe. Take it. She read the message 3 times, then, with shaking fingers, typed back, "Thank you." His response came immediately. "Don't thank me yet. This is only the beginning." The days that followed moved with a strange, dreamlike quality. Lily found herself existing in 2 parallel realities, one where she was unemployed and recovering from an assault, another where mysterious deposits appeared in her account, and her mother's medical team suddenly included specialists she'd only read about in medical journals. She didn't leave her apartment for 3 days. Couldn't bring herself to face the city, the people, the questions she'd have no answers for. Instead, she watched the news obsessively, waiting for someone to connect the dots, to trace the disappearances back to the gala, back to her. Nothing came. The missing men's families offered rewards, private investigators were hired. The police held press conferences with increasingly desperate appeals for information. But the trail remained cold, the mystery unsolved, and gradually the news cycle moved on to other tragedies, other scandals. On the 4th day, her mother called. "Lily?" Her voice was stronger than it had been in months, and Lily's throat tightened hearing it. "The doctors here are saying things I don't understand. Something about a foundation covering my treatment. Did you do something?" Lily closed her eyes, pressing the phone tight against her ear. "It's taken care of, Mom. Just focus on getting better." "But how? We couldn't afford—" "It's handled." She kept her voice steady, practiced. "A grant. Medical charity. Don't worry about the details." Her mother was quiet for a long moment, then softly, "You sound different." "I'm tired, that's all." Lily Marie Dawson. Her full name, the one her mother only used when she knew something was wrong. What happened? Everything. Nothing. The end of one life and the beginning of something she couldn't name. "I lost my job," Lily said finally, because that at least was a truth her mother could process. "But I'm figuring things out. I promise." They talked for another 20 minutes, her mother's worry palpable even through the phone line, before a nurse came to take her for treatment. Lily hung up and stared at her apartment walls, feeling the weight of all the lies she'd have to maintain, all the secrets that had taken root in her life like poison ivy. Her phone buzzed. Not Victor this time, but an unknown number. "Ms. Dawson, my name is Grace Chen. I work for Mr. Hale. He's requested a meeting at your earliest convenience. A car will be available whenever you're ready." Lily read the message twice, then typed, "Why?" The response came quickly. "He didn't say. But Mr. Hale doesn't make requests lightly. I'd suggest accepting. She should refuse. Should block the number, delete Victor's messages, pretend the last 4 days had been a fever dream." Instead, she found herself typing, "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Excellent. The car will arrive at 1:45. Dress comfortably. What did that mean in Victor Hale's world? Lily looked down at her ratty NYU shirt and sweatpants, tried to imagine sitting across from him dressed like this, and laughed. The sound echoed harsh and slightly unhinged in her empty apartment. She needed air, needed to remember what the world felt like beyond these 4 walls. The street outside her building was exactly as she'd left it. Bodegas and laundromats, fire escapes draped with drying clothes, the eternal smell of garbage and exhaust, and someone's cooking wafting from open windows. Familiar. Real. Nothing like the sanitized world of the gala, the VIP rooms, the storage closet where everything had shattered. Lily walked without direction, letting her feet choose the path, past the corner store where she bought her coffee, past the park where homeless men slept on benches, past the subway entrance that led to her old commute. Every step felt like reclaiming territory, proving to herself that she was still here, still whole, still capable of existing in daylight. She ended up at the public library, that beautiful old building with its stone lions and endless quiet. Inside, she found a computer terminal in the back corner and pulled up everything she could find about the Hale family. The information was frustratingly vague. Old money, but not old enough to have robber baron origins. The family fortune seemed to have materialized in the 1970s, grown exponentially through investments in infrastructure, real estate, and what the articles vaguely termed private security services. Victor's father, Marcus Hale, had died 10 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, no suspicion of foul play. His mother had passed when Victor was young, no siblings mentioned, except Lily clicked deeper, following a thread through archived newspaper articles. Elena Hale, born 1998, died 2021. Victor's half-sister from his father's second marriage. The articles about her death were brief, clinical, no scandal, no investigation. Just a young woman who'd taken too many pills in her expensive apartment and a family that had buried her quietly. But there was one article from a smaller publication that mentioned something the major outlets hadn't. Elena had filed a police report 3 months before her death. Sexual assault. The case had been dropped due to insufficient evidence. The accused was never named. Lily sat back in the hard plastic chair, her heart hammering. Victor had mentioned his sister, past tense, had said she'd survived and built a life away from their world. But that wasn't true, was it? Elena hadn't survived. She'd died, probably by her own hand, probably because the system had failed her just like it failed everyone who didn't have the right last name or the right connections. And Victor had learned something from that. Had changed. Had become whatever he was now, someone who made 5 men disappear overnight without leaving a trace. She cleared her browser history and left the library feeling like she'd swallowed glass. That night, she dreamed of Ryan Caldwell's hands and woke up, gasping, her sheets soaked with sweat. 3 a.m. Too early to be awake, too late to fall back asleep. She made tea she didn't drink and watched the city lights through her window until dawn broke gray and reluctant over the skyline. At 1:45 p.m. exactly, a black Mercedes pulled up outside her building. Not the same one from the gala night, but close enough to make her hand shake as she locked her apartment door. She'd dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, the nicest things she owned that weren't event coordinator uniforms. Her reflection in the elevator's scratched mirror looked pale, tired, and very young. The driver who opened her door was different from James, a woman this time, middle-aged with kind eyes and a professional demeanor that somehow made Lily feel less like she was being kidnapped. "Ms. Dawson, I'm Sarah. Mr. Hale is expecting you." "Where are we going?" "His office, Midtown." Sarah pulled smoothly into traffic. "Have you eaten? I can stop if you'd like." "I'm fine." A lie. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, but her stomach was twisted too tight to handle food. They drove in silence through Manhattan's afternoon chaos. Lily watched the streets change as they moved from her neighborhood into areas where buildings were taller, cleaner, newer, where people walked with purpose and expensive coffee and designer bags, where someone like her stood out like a stain. The building Sarah pulled up to was sleek glass and steel, all modern lines and intimidating height. Hale Industries, the discreet sign read. Sarah escorted her through a lobby that screamed wealth, marble floors, abstract art that probably cost more than her yearly salary, security that checked her ID twice before letting her through. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor. Sarah used hers, then stepped back. "Mr. Hale is waiting. Grace will meet you up there." The doors closed before Lily could protest. The elevator rose so smoothly she barely felt the movement, just watched the numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, 50. When it finally stopped, her ears popped. The doors opened onto a reception area that was all clean lines and understated luxury. A woman stood waiting, Asian, late 20s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and an expression of professional warmth. "Ms. Dawson, I'm Grace. Thank you for coming." "I didn't realize I had a choice," Lily said, then immediately regretted the sharpness in her tone. But Grace just smiled slightly. "You always have a choice. Mr. Hale is very particular about that." But she gestured towards a hallway. "This way, please." The office was corner suite perfection. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her car, and Victor Hales standing with his back to her, hands in his pockets, looking out at his city. He didn't turn when she entered. "Thank you, Grace. Hold my calls." The door clicked shut, leaving them alone. Lily stood awkwardly near the entrance, unsure whether to sit, to speak, to leave. Victor continued staring out the window for another long moment before finally turning to face her. He looked different in daylight. Younger, maybe, or just more human. He'd lost the jacket. Shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie. Reading glasses perched on his nose that he removed as he studied her. "You look better," he said finally. "The bruises are fading. Makeup helps." She crossed her arms defensively. "Why am I here?" "Because we need to discuss your future." He moved to his desk, gestured to the chair across from it. "Please, sit." "I'd rather stand." "Suit yourself." He leaned against his desk, regarding her with that unsettling calm. "How is your mother?" "Don't." Lily's voice came out harder than she intended. "Don't pretend to care about my mother. This isn't about her. Whatever this is, it's about you and whatever game you're playing." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. "You're right. Your mother's health is secure regardless of this conversation. The Foundation's support isn't contingent on anything you do or don't do." He paused. "But you're wrong about one thing. I do care. Not in the way you might want or expect, but I care about seeing capable people achieve their potential instead of being crushed under circumstances they didn't create." How noble. The sarcasm felt good, gave her something to hold on to. 5 men disappear and suddenly you're a philanthropist. "I've been a philanthropist for years. Tax benefits aside, it's an efficient way to address systemic failures." He picked up a folder from his desk, held it out to her. "This is yours. Take it." Lily didn't move. "What is it?" "Information about the men who disappeared, about what they did, who they hurt, how many times they got away with it, about the systems that protected them and the people who enabled them." His voice remained level, factual. "You deserve to know exactly who you helped remove from the equation." "I didn't help." "You gave me a name," Victor interrupted. "You made a choice, conscious or not, to trust me with that information. You're complicit, Lily. Not legally, perhaps, but morally. You can either own that or spend the rest of your life pretending it didn't happen." She wanted to argue, to deny it, but the words stuck in her throat, because he was right, wasn't he? She'd known, on some level, what giving him Ryan's name would mean, had felt the cold calculation in Victor's questions, the predatory patience. She'd handed him a target, and he'd pulled the trigger. Slowly, she crossed the office and took the folder. Inside were files, 5 of them. Detailed, thorough, the kind of research that took resources and time and access she couldn't imagine. Each man's face stared up at her from printed photographs, and beneath each photo, a list. Names, dates, accusations, settlements, NDAs, a pattern of violence spanning years, protected by money and power and families who valued reputation over justice. 17 women, Victor had said. The files documented 19. Lily's hands shook as she read. A waitress in Brooklyn, a paralegal in White Plains, a college student, a cleaning woman, a journalist. On, story after story of women who'd trusted the wrong man, accepted the wrong drink, taken the wrong job. Women who'd reported and been ignored, who'd settled because fighting was too expensive, who'd disappeared into silence because the alternative was destruction. She reached Ryan's file last. His list was shorter, only 4 women, but no less damning. The most recent entry was dated 3 weeks before the gala. A hostess at a restaurant his family owned, 20 years old. She'd quit the next day. No report filed. Where are they? Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper. The men. Where did you send them? Victor was quiet for a long moment, then, somewhere they can't hurt anyone else. Somewhere they have to work for their survival instead of having it handed to them. Somewhere their names and their money mean nothing. He moved to the window again. They're alive, as I promised, but the lives they're living now? Let's just say it's a significant adjustment. That's not justice. That's revenge. Is it? He glanced at her over his shoulder. What would justice look like to you, Lily? A trial they'd buy their way out of? A settlement that would silence their victims one more time? A slap on the wrist and a promise to do better that they'd break the moment no one was watching? The system... The system is designed to protect men like them. You know this. You lived it. His voice hardened slightly. I gave those 19 women something the system never would. Certainty. Their attackers are gone. Forever. They can sleep without wondering if he'll show up at their work, their home, their favorite coffee shop. They can rebuild without looking over their shoulder. That's more justice than any courtroom would have provided. Lily sank into the chair she'd refused earlier, the folder heavy in her lap. You sound like you've justified this to yourself pretty thoroughly. I have, multiple times over multiple years. He turned fully to face her now. I'm not a hero, Ms. Dawson. I don't harbor illusions about moral superiority. I'm simply someone with resources and a willingness to use them in ways others won't, or can't. Why me? The question burst out before she could stop it. Why did you help me? You said yourself I'm nobody to people like you. You were nobody, he corrected gently. Past tense. But then you did something remarkable. You survived an assault, prioritized your responsibilities over your trauma, and still managed to tell me the truth when I asked. That takes strength most people don't have, especially in your circumstances. My circumstances? You mean being poor? I mean being trapped between impossible choices. Continue working in an industry that had just proven it wouldn't protect you, or lose the income supporting your mother's medical care. Most people would have frozen, lied, protected themselves at any cost. He paused. You protected yourself by telling the truth. That's unusual. It's also exactly the kind of quality I look for. Lily's head snapped up. Look for? For what? For people I can trust. People who understand that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same. He returned to his desk, pulled out another folder, thinner than the first. I have a proposition for you. I don't want... Hear me out, then decide. He slid the folder across the desk. I need someone to help run a new foundation I'm establishing, the Hail Justice Initiative. Its purpose is to provide support, financial, legal, protective, to survivors of sexual violence whose cases have been dismissed, buried, or settled into silence. Someone who understands what those women need. Someone they'll trust. Lily stared at him. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a purpose. The job comes with it. He leaned back in his chair. Salary is substantial, benefits are comprehensive. Your mother's medical care remains covered regardless, but this would give you financial independence beyond that. You'd have autonomy over the foundation's operations, access to resources most nonprofits dream of, and the backing of my legal team for cases that require more aggressive intervention. Aggressive intervention? You mean making people disappear? I mean ensuring that survivors aren't re-victimized by systems designed to protect their abusers. Sometimes that requires legal action. Sometimes it requires other approaches. His expression remained neutral. You'd have full discretion over which cases warrant which methods. I trust your judgment. You don't know me well enough to trust my judgment. I know enough. I know you've spent 3 years coordinating events where wealthy people throw away money on flowers and champagne that could feed families for months. I know you put yourself through NYU while working full-time to support your mother. I know you've been surviving on less than $1,500 a month after medical bills. I know you could have sued Chen Premier Events for wrongful termination, but didn't because you understood it would destroy any chance of working in the industry again. He paused. I know you're smart, resilient, and deeply angry at how unfair the world is. Those are exactly the qualities this foundation needs. Lily opened the second folder. Inside was a contract, employment agreement. The salary listed made her vision blur. 6 figures, health insurance, retirement matching, an office in this building, resources that would let her actually help people instead of just sympathizing from a distance. This is insane, she whispered. It's an opportunity, one you're free to refuse. And if I refuse? Then you walk out of here with no obligations. Your mother's care continues. The deposits in your account are yours to keep. We never speak again. His voice gentled. I meant what I said, Lily. No strings. But I hope you'll consider it. You could make a real difference. Help women who are exactly where you were a week ago, broken, bleeding, and convinced the world doesn't care. She thought about the 19 names in the first folder, thought about the hostess who'd quit her job and probably blamed herself, thought about all the women she'd never meet, never know about, who were living with the weight of violence they couldn't escape and systems that wouldn't help. "I need time," she said finally. "Of course. Take a week. 2, if you need it." He stood, extending his hand. "Grace will give you her direct number. Call when you've decided." Lily stood too, leaving his hand hanging in the air between them. "The men, the 5 who disappeared. Tell me they're suffering." Victor's expression shifted into something cold and satisfied. "Every single day." "Good." She took his hand then, felt the firm grip, the warmth of his palm against hers. "I'll call you in 3 days." She left his office with both folders tucked under her arm, her mind racing, her heart pounding. Grace handed her a business card as she passed, embossed, expensive, with a personal cell number written on the back in elegant script. In the elevator, descending from the 50th floor back to ground level, Lily finally let herself feel the weight of what had just happened. Victor Hale had offered her a way forward, not a rescue. She was beginning to understand he didn't do rescues. An opportunity. A chance to take everything that had broken her and forge it into something that could help others. But it came with a price. Complicity. Acceptance that justice sometimes wore a mask and operated outside the law. Willingness to look at men like Ryan Caldwell and feel satisfaction in their suffering instead of moral superiority in their prosecution. The elevator doors opened. Sarah was waiting by the car, professional smile in place. "How did it go?" "I'm not sure yet," Lily said honestly. The drive back to her apartment felt shorter, or maybe she was just lost in thought. When Sarah dropped her off, Lily climbed the stairs to her floor in a daze, let herself into her apartment, and spread both folders across her coffee table. 19 women. 19 stories of pain and silence and systems that failed them. She could help. Could use Victor's resources and reach to give them something the law never would. But she'd have to accept that helping meant operating in gray areas, meant making choices that would keep her awake at night, meant becoming part of Victor Hale's world, with all its darkness and necessary evils. Her phone rang. Her mother again. "Hey, Mom." "Lily, sweetheart, I just met Dr. Richardson. She says—" Her mother's voice cracked with emotion. "She says there's real hope now, that the new treatment could put me in remission. How is this possible?" Lily closed her eyes, thought about Victor Hale's calm certainty, his willingness to do what others wouldn't, his sister who died because the system failed her. "Someone decided to help," she said quietly. "That's all." They talked for an hour, her mother's optimism infectious and heartbreaking. When they finally hung up, Lily sat in the gathering dark of her apartment and made her decision. She called Grace Chen's direct number. "Ms. Dawson?" Grace answered on the first ring. "Tell Victor I accept. I'll start as soon as he needs me." There was a brief pause, then quiet satisfaction in Grace's voice. "He'll be pleased. Can you come in Monday morning? 9 a.m. We'll handle all the paperwork and get you set up." "Monday's fine," Lily paused. "Grace, the women in those files, the 19, does he help them too, beyond making their attackers disappear?" "Every single one," Grace said softly. "Medical care, therapy, job placement if needed, legal support, whatever they need to rebuild. Mr. Hale doesn't do half measures." Lily's throat tightened. "Thank you for telling me." "See you Monday, Ms. Dawson. Welcome to the team." The call ended. Lily sat in the dark, surrounded by files documenting violence and the cold mathematics of Victor Hale's justice, and wondered what kind of person she was becoming. But then she thought about the hostess who'd quit, the paralegal, the college student, all the women who'd been hurt and forgotten, and she thought maybe, just maybe, becoming someone who could help them was worth the cost. Her phone buzzed one last time that night. Victor Hale. "Thank you for trusting me. You won't regret it." She typed back, "I already do, but I'll do it anyway." His response was immediate. "That's why I chose you." Lily set her phone down, pulled her laptop into her lap, and began reading through the folders properly. Every name, every story, every detail of suffering and silence. If she was going to do this, really do this, she needed to understand the scope of what she was fighting. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan again, she'd read all 19 files twice. committed the names to memory, made notes about patterns, about the systems that had failed, about what these women would need to truly heal. And somewhere in those quiet hours, Lily Dawson stopped being a victim trying to survive and became something else entirely. Someone with purpose, resources, and a cold understanding that sometimes the only way to fight monsters was to have a monster on your side. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Lily dressed carefully, professional but not expensive, competent but not threatening. She took the subway into Midtown, walked the last 3 blocks to Hale Industries, and rode the elevator to the 50th floor with her heart in her throat. Grace met her with coffee and a warm smile. "Ready?" "No," Lily admitted, "but let's do it anyway." The office they'd prepared for her was smaller than Victor's, but still impressive. Windows overlooking the city, a desk that probably cost more than her monthly rent, computers and phones and resources she'd never dreamed of having access to. Grace walked her through security protocols, introduced her to the legal team, explained the foundation structure and funding. Victor appeared around noon, leaning in her doorway with his hands in his pockets. "Settling in?" "It's overwhelming." Lily gestured at the stacks of files Grace had left for her to review. "There's so much." "Start small. One case at a time. One woman at a time." He stepped into her office, picked up the photo frame Grace had placed on her desk. Empty, waiting for her to fill it. "You'll find your rhythm. And when I don't, when I make mistakes, then we fix them, together." He set the frame down carefully. "This isn't a test, Lily. I'm not waiting for you to fail. I chose you because I believe you can do this. Trust that judgment, even if you don't trust yourself yet." She wanted to argue, to list all the reasons she was unqualified, unprepared, wrong for this. But his expression was calm, certain, the same look he'd had in the storage room when he'd asked for Ryan's name. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll try." "That's all I ask." He turned to leave, then paused. "Lily, thank you for choosing this, for choosing to help instead of turning away. It matters more than you know." He left before she could respond. Lily sat at her new desk, in her new office, surrounded by files of women who needed help. She now had the power to provide. Outside her window, Manhattan sprawled in all its complicated glory, beautiful and brutal, full of predators and prey, and people like her who'd somehow found themselves with the resources to shift that balance. She opened the first file, read the name, made her first call as director of the Hale Justice Initiative, and began the work of turning her pain into purpose. The woman on the other end of the line was crying before Lily even finished introducing herself. "I don't understand," she said, her voice thick with confusion and something that sounded dangerously close to hope. "Why would someone want to help me? That was 2 years ago. Everyone told me to move on." Lily gripped the phone tighter, staring at the file open on her desk. Sarah Mitchell, 24. Nursing student who'd been assaulted by a attending physician during her clinical rotation. She'd reported it. The hospital had conducted an internal investigation that concluded insufficient evidence. The doctor still worked there. Sarah had switched programs, moved cities, accumulated debt she'd never escape. "Because what happened to you matters," Lily said quietly, "and because you deserved better than you got. The Hale Justice Initiative exists to provide support that should have been there from the beginning." "Support how? I mean, I appreciate the call, but I've already been through therapy. I've already tried reporting again. Nothing changes. Men like Dr. Patterson don't face consequences." "They do now." Lily heard the edge in her own voice, recognized it as something she'd learned from Victor. "Dr. Patterson no longer practices medicine. His license was revoked last week, pending criminal investigation." The silence on the other end stretched so long Lily thought the call had dropped. "Then, how?" "We have resources, connections. Evidence that was overlooked before gets a second look with the right pressure applied." Lily kept her voice professional, warm. Didn't mention that Victor's legal team had found 3 other victims willing to testify once they knew they'd be protected. Didn't mention the private investigator who'd uncovered Patterson's pattern of misconduct spanning 15 years. "What matters is that he won't hurt anyone else. And we'd like to help you rebuild. There's a fund available for completing your nursing degree. No strings. No repayment required." Sarah started crying harder. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just take care of yourself. Grace Chen, our coordinator, will reach out with details. Lily paused. Sarah, you were right to report. You were right to speak up. The system failed you, but that failure wasn't your fault. Thank you, Sarah whispered. I didn't think anyone cared. Someone always cares. Sometimes it just takes time to find them. After the call ended, Lily sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. One conversation, one woman's life shifted slightly back toward justice. It wasn't enough, would never be enough to balance the scales. But it was something. Grace appeared in her doorway, tablet in hand. How did it go? She cried. Lily rubbed her eyes. They all cry. That's because most of them have spent months or years being told their pain doesn't matter. Hearing that someone believes them, that someone's willing to help, Grace shrugged. It's overwhelming, in a good way. Is it always like this? Lily gestured at the stack of files that seemed to grow daily instead of shrink. Does the work ever feel like it's making a dent? Yes and no. Grace settled into the chair across from Lily's desk. You'll help dozens, maybe hundreds of women. You'll see real change in individual lives. But the systems that created these situations? Those are harder to shift. Victor's been at this for 5 years. He's made progress, but it's incremental. 5 years. Since his sister died. Lily had pieced together enough to understand that Elena's death had been the catalyst, the moment Victor had decided his wealth and power needed a purpose beyond accumulation. Does he ever talk about her? Elena? Grace's expression softened. Not often, but she's why we're all here, why this foundation exists, why Victor is the way he is. She paused. He was different before she died. Colder. More focused on business than people. Elena's death broke something in him, but it also built something new, something better, I think. Better. Lily thought about 5 missing men, about Victor's calm certainty that their suffering was justified. I'm not sure I'd use that word. Neither would he, probably, but he's honest about what he is. That counts for something. Grace stood. Speaking of Victor, he wanted me to let you know he's hosting a dinner tonight. Small gathering, people involved in similar work. He'd like you to attend. Lily's stomach dropped. I don't do well at fancy dinners. I spent 3 years serving them, not attending them. This isn't fancy. It's Chinese takeout in the conference room with people who actually care about making a difference. Wear jeans. Bring your questions. Grace smiled. 7 p.m. I'll send you the details. After Grace left, Lily tried to focus on the next file, but her mind kept drifting to the idea of dinner with Victor and his colleagues. What did people who operated in the gray spaces of justice talk about over takeout? What kind of person chose this work, knowing it meant bending or breaking rules most people considered sacred? She found out that evening. The conference room had been transformed from its usual corporate sterility into something almost cozy. The massive table was covered in takeout containers. The overhead lights dimmed in favor of softer lamps, and 6 people sat scattered around in casual clothes that would have scandalized any actual board meeting. Victor sat at the head of the table in jeans and a simple black sweater, looking more human than Lily had ever seen him. He stood when she entered, that slight smile touching his face. Lily, glad you could make it. Everyone, this is Lily Dawson, our new director of the Justice Initiative. The introductions blurred together. Marcus, a former prosecutor who'd quit in disgust after watching too many cases dismissed. Jennifer, a trauma therapist who specialized in assault survivors. David, who ran a similar foundation in Chicago focused on domestic violence. Aisha, a private investigator with a background in military intelligence. And Grace, who Lily was starting to realize was far more than just Victor's assistant. Help yourself, Victor said, gesturing at the food. We're informal here. No hierarchy. Just people trying to do difficult work. Lily filled a plate with lo mein and dumplings, settled into a chair near the middle of the table, and tried to feel less like an imposter. These people had years of experience, credentials, networks. She had a week on the job and a trauma she was still processing. So, Marcus said, studying her with sharp eyes that probably missed nothing, Victor says you came to this work through personal experience. If you don't mind me asking, what made you decide to take the job instead of walking away? Every eye turned to her. Lily set down her chopsticks, took a breath. Because walking away meant letting what happened to me be meaningless. This way, at least it serves a purpose. Jennifer nodded slowly. That's why most of us are here, trauma conversion, turning pain into action. Sounds noble when you put it that way, Lily said. Feels messier from the inside. It is messy. Isha's voice carried a hint of accent. British, maybe. Anyone who tells you this work is clean is lying or delusional. We operate in spaces the law won't touch, help people the system abandoned. That requires flexibility others might call compromise. Compromise, Lily repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Victor's expression sharpened with something like approval. What would you call it? I don't know yet. I'm still figuring out how I feel about methods that include making people disappear. She met his gaze steadily. You offered me this job because you said I understood that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same, but I'm not sure I've made peace with where that line actually falls. Good, David said unexpectedly. The day you make complete peace with it is the day you should quit. This work requires moral discomfort. Certainty is dangerous. Marcus raised his beer bottle in agreement. I spent 15 years as a prosecutor, absolutely certain I was one of the good guys. Then I watched a judge dismiss a rape case because the victim had been drinking. The defendant's father played golf with that judge. The certainty died that day. How do you live with it? Lily asked quietly. Knowing what you know. Seeing what you've seen. How do you not become as corrupt as the systems you're fighting? We probably are corrupt by someone's definition, Jennifer said with a slight smile. But I'd rather be corrupt and effective than pure and useless. The women I help don't care if I'm morally perfect. They care if I can get them safe. The conversation flowed around her after that. These people who'd chosen difficult paths sharing war stories and small victories. Marcus talked about a case where they'd helped convict a serial predator using evidence the police had ignored. Jennifer described a group therapy program funded by Victor's foundation that was showing remarkable results. David and Aisha debated the ethics of using questionable surveillance methods to protect domestic violence victims from abusers who'd violated restraining orders. Through it all, Victor mostly listened, interjecting occasionally with quiet questions or observations that steered the conversation deeper. Lily found herself watching him, trying to reconcile the cold efficiency of the man who'd made 5 people disappear with this version who clearly cared deeply about his team's well-being and the work they were doing. Around 9, people started making their excuses. Early meetings, long commutes, families waiting at home. Soon it was just Lily, Victor, and Grace cleaning up the remnants of dinner. You were quiet toward the end, Victor observed, consolidating leftover rice into one container. Overwhelmed? Processing. Lily tied off a garbage bag. These people are impressive. I'm not sure I belong in the same room. They all felt that way at first. Grace collected the empty beer bottles. Give it time. You'll find your footing. Grace is being diplomatic, Victor said. What she means is you'll either adapt or burn out. This work isn't for everyone. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Lily said dryly. I'm being realistic. Not everyone can handle the cognitive dissonance of helping people through methods society condemns. It requires a specific kind of strength. He paused in his cleaning, looking at her directly. I think you have it, but only you can decide if you want to use it. Grace excused herself, citing an early morning meeting, leaving Lily and Victor alone in the conference room. The silence felt different than before, more comfortable somehow, like they'd crossed some invisible threshold during the evening. Can I ask you something? Lily said finally. Always. The 5 men, the ones who disappeared, where are they really? And please don't give me the vague answer about them being alive and uncomfortable. I need to know what I'm part of. Victor was quiet for a long moment, weighing something in his mind. Then he moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. There's a private security company I partially own. They operate in regions most people couldn't locate on a map. Hostile environments, dangerous work. The kind of jobs that require bodies but don't ask too many questions about background or credentials. Lily's stomach tightened. You sent them to war zones. I sent them to places where their privilege and their names mean nothing, where they have to earn their survival through actual work instead of inherited wealth, where the women around them are armed and wouldn't hesitate to kill them if they stepped out of line. He turned back to face her. They're guarding supply convoys through insurgent territory, living in barracks with no air conditioning, eating rations, sending their paychecks to the women they assaulted as restitution. They're alive. They're just living very different lives than before. That's... Lily struggled for words. That's insane. What if they escape, come back, tell someone? They won't. The contracts they signed are ironclad. The remote locations make escape essentially impossible. And even if they did somehow make it back to the States, what would they say? That they were kidnapped and forced to work overseas? By whom? With what evidence? They all left the gala of their own volition. Security footage shows it. They withdrew cash from ATMs the next day in different locations, sent emails to family about sudden business opportunities abroad. His expression was calm, almost bored. I'm very thorough, Lily. When I commit to something, I consider every angle. She should be horrified. Should be calling the police, reporting this, getting as far from Victor Hale as possible. Instead, she found herself thinking about Sarah Mitchell, about the nursing student who'd had to abandon her career because a doctor faced no consequences, about the hostess who'd quit, about 19 women whose attackers had walked free until Victor decided otherwise. Show me, she said suddenly. Victor's eyebrows rose slightly. Show you what? Proof that they're alive, that they're where you say they are. If I'm going to be complicit in this, I need to see it. Her voice steadied. I need to know the monsters are really in cages and not just buried somewhere convenient. Something shifted in Victor's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. He pulled out his phone, tapped through several screens, then handed it to her. These are updated weekly. Biometric confirmation that they're alive and where they're supposed to be. The screen showed a dashboard of names, locations, and status reports. Ryan Caldwell, active duty, supply convoy escort, location classified. The others were similar. Photos accompanied each entry, recent enough that Lily could see the changes. The pampered softness gone from their faces, replaced by sunburn and exhaustion and something that looked like fear. They're scared, she said softly. They should be. The work is dangerous. People die doing it. But they're being paid, fed, and given the chance to earn their way back to civilization. More mercy than they showed their victims. Lily handed the phone back. How long do they stay there? Minimum 5 years. After that, if they've completed their contracts without incident, they can return. They'll have nothing. No family money, no connections, no reputation. Just the skills they learned and the choice to rebuild as different men or disappear into obscurity. And if they don't complete the contract? Victor's smile was cold. Then they stay until they do, or until the work kills them. Occupational hazard. She should feel sick. Should feel complicit in something monstrous. Instead, Lily felt a dark satisfaction settling into her bones. Ryan Caldwell, who'd laughed when she'd tried to scream, was now living in fear every day, learning what helplessness felt like, earning his survival instead of assuming it as a birthright. I'm a terrible person for being okay with this, she said quietly. You're a realistic person who understands that sometimes traditional justice is just another word for letting wealthy predators win. Victor pocketed his phone. But if it helps, you can stop being okay with it any time. Nothing requires you to approve of my methods, just to do your job helping the survivors. That's the thing, though. Lily met his eyes. I don't think I can separate the two. Knowing that the men who hurt these women are facing real consequences makes it easier to help them rebuild. It gives them closure the courts never would. Then we're aligned in our moral compromise. Welcome to the gray. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you asked. Most people prefer plausible deniability. The fact that you wanted to know, wanted to see proof, suggests you're taking this seriously. Of course I'm taking it seriously. I'm helping run a foundation that operates outside the law while working with a man who essentially enslaves criminals in foreign countries. She laughed, the sound slightly unhinged. How could I not take that seriously? Fair point. Victor's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Go home, Lily. Get some rest. Tomorrow we have 3 new cases coming in, and you'll need to be sharp. She gathered her things and headed for the elevator, her mind churning through everything she'd learned, everything she'd seen, everything she was becoming part of. The doors were closing when Victor's hand shot out, stopping them. One more thing, he said. Thank you for staying, for pushing back when you disagree, for asking hard questions. This organization needs that. I need that. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. You're welcome, she managed. He stepped back and let the doors close. Lily rode down to the lobby in silence, walked out into the Manhattan night, and took the long way home, needing the time to process. Her phone buzzed as she reached her subway stop. Her mother. Hey, sweetheart. I know it's late, but I just had to tell you, Dr. Richardson says the treatment is working better than expected. She's talking about remission timelines. Real ones. Lily, I might actually beat this. The tears came before Lily could stop them. That's amazing, Mom. That's so amazing. I don't know how you manage this, but thank you for fighting for me, for finding a way. Her mother's voice cracked. I know you've sacrificed so much. You're worth it, Lily said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. You're worth everything. They talked until Lily reached her apartment, her mother's hope infectious even through the phone. When they finally hung up, Lily sat on her bed and thought about sacrifice, about the choices that led her here, about Victor Hale's methods and Marcus's disillusionment and her own growing understanding that purity was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed again. Victor. Your mother's prognosis is excellent. Dr. Richardson is the best. She'll take good care of her. Lily typed back, I know, thank you, for everything. You've thanked me enough. Focus on the work. Focus on helping the women who need it. That's all the gratitude I require. She set her phone down and pulled up the files for tomorrow's cases. 3 new women. 3 new stories of violence and systemic failure. 3 more chances to make a difference, to prove that her compromise, her moral flexibility, her willingness to work with a man like Victor Hale was worth it. The first file made her pause. Rebecca Torres, 29, marketing executive who'd been assaulted by her company's CEO at a business dinner. She'd reported to HR. The company had settled quietly, made her sign an NDA, and the CEO remained in his position. Rebecca had taken the settlement because she had student loans and a mortgage and couldn't afford to fight. The NDA prevented her from speaking publicly. The CEO had assaulted another employee 6 months later. Lily read through the details twice, feeling rage build in her chest. This was exactly the kind of case the Justice Initiative existed for. Rebecca deserved more than hush money and a gag order. She deserved justice. She opened her laptop and started drafting an approach. Legal angles, support services, protection strategies. If the CEO wouldn't face consequences through normal channels, then Victor's resources would ensure he faced them another way. She was just starting to outline next steps when her phone rang. Victor again. She answered with a slight smile. If you're checking up on me, I'm already working. I'm not checking up, I'm warning you. His voice was tight in a way she'd never heard before. There's been a development. Ryan Caldwell's father has started asking questions, hired a private investigator to track his son's movements after the gala. The warmth drained from Lily's body. How much does he know? Nothing concrete yet, but he's persistent and well-funded. It's only a matter of time before the investigator starts looking at connections between the 5 missing men, starts noticing they all attended the same event. What do? We stay calm. My legal team is already working on creating additional layers of misdirection. But Lily, I need you to be prepared. If this goes sideways, if Caldwell manages to trace anything back to you or the Foundation, you need to distance yourself immediately. I won't let you go down with me. I'm not running. The words came out fierce, certain. If this falls apart, we face it together. I'm in this now. Completely. Victor was quiet for a long moment. You realize what you're saying. If we're exposed, you'll face criminal charges, conspiracy at minimum, possibly accessory to kidnapping. Your life will be destroyed. My life was already being destroyed. At least this way, it means something. She gripped the phone tighter. I'm not afraid of Caldwell or his investigator. We did the right thing. Those men deserved what they got. The legal system won't see it that way. The legal system failed me and 19 other women. I don't particularly care what it thinks. She paused. What do you need me to do? Nothing yet. Just be aware. Be careful. Don't discuss the disappearances with anyone outside our immediate circle. His voice softened slightly. And Lily, thank you for not running. It means more than you know. After he hung up, Lily sat in the dark of her apartment and felt the weight of the choice she'd just made. She could have taken the out Victor offered, could have claimed ignorance, distance, plausible deniability. Instead, she'd bound herself more tightly to him and his methods, and the inevitable consequences. But she didn't regret it. Not when she thought about her mother's improving health, about Sarah Mitchell finishing her nursing degree, about Rebecca Torres getting the justice she deserved. This was the price of making a difference. This was what choosing purpose over safety looked like. She went back to Rebecca's file and worked until dawn, building a case strategy that would either save a woman's career or blow up in all their faces. When her alarm went off at 7, she showered, dressed, and headed back to the office with a clarity she hadn't felt since before the gala. Grace was already there, looking tired but determined. Victor briefed me on the Caldwell situation. We're implementing enhanced security protocols, nothing traceable back to you or the foundation. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the other women. If this investigation exposes them, if their attackers' families come after them for revenge, Victor's already arranging protection, enhanced security for anyone who might be at risk. He's not going to let them become collateral damage. Lily nodded, then handed Grace the strategy she'd developed overnight. Rebecca Torres. I want her case prioritized. The CEO needs to face consequences before he hurts someone else. Grace scanned the document, eyebrows rising. This is aggressive. You're essentially proposing we force him out of his own company. He used his position of power to assault employees and silence them with money. Yes, I'm proposing we remove that power. Is it doable? With Victor's connections and the evidence we can gather? Absolutely. Grace looked up with a slight smile. You're learning fast. I have a good teacher. Lily settled into her desk chair, pulling up the rest of the day's schedule. What else do we have? They worked through the morning in focused intensity, Grace coordinating with the legal team while Lily reached out to new cases. Each call was difficult in its own way, but also strangely empowering. She was finally able to tell survivors that their pain mattered, that someone was willing to fight for them, that justice might be slow, but it was coming. Around noon, Victor appeared in her doorway. Walk with me. They took the elevator down to street level and walked through the lunch crowd, 2 people among thousands, anonymous and unremarkable. Victor didn't speak until they turned into a quieter side street. Caldwell's investigator made contact with someone from the gala, a waiter who remembered seeing Ryan go into the VIP room, remembered you going in shortly after. He said it calmly, factually, but Lily felt her heart rate spike. What did he tell them? That you came out 20 minutes later looking upset, that you disappeared into a storage room, that I found you there shortly after. Victor's jaw tightened. The investigator is building a timeline. He's smart enough to realize something happened in that room, and he's starting to ask why I took such personal interest in a random event coordinator. So he thinks we're connected, that I'm involved somehow. He's working toward that conclusion. It's only a matter of time before he figures out you gave me Ryan's name, before he realizes I had motive and opportunity to do something about it. Lily's mind raced. Can you pay him off, make him go away? I could, but that would confirm his suspicions. Innocent people don't pay investigators to stop investigating. Victor stopped walking, turned to face her. I need to know if you're truly ready for this, because once the questions start, they won't stop. Your life will be examined. Your history, your relationships, your finances. Every decision you've made since the gala will be scrutinized. She thought about her mother, safe in her hospital bed with the best care money could buy. About Sarah Mitchell and Rebecca Torres and all the women who needed help the Justice Initiative could provide. About the dark satisfaction she'd felt seeing Ryan Caldwell's photo, sunburned and scared, in that dashboard of consequences. I'm ready, she said steadily. Whatever comes, I can handle it. Victor studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Then we proceed as planned. We do our work. We help the women who need it, and we trust that we've covered our tracks well enough to withstand scrutiny. And if we haven't? His smile was sharp, cold, and absolutely certain. Then we fight, and we win, because losing isn't an option when this much is at stake. They walked back to the office in silence, Lily's mind already preparing for the storm she could feel gathering on the horizon. The investigator would keep digging. Questions would be asked. Pressure would build. But she'd faced worse than questions. She'd faced Ryan Caldwell's hands and his laughter, and the crushing certainty that no one would help her. This time she wasn't alone. This time she had resources, power, and a man willing to burn the world down to protect what mattered. This time she was ready for the fight. The investigator's name was Thomas Brennan, and he showed up at Lily's apartment building on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after Victor's warning. She was leaving for work when she found him waiting by the entrance, a middle-aged man in an unremarkable suit with the patient eyes of someone who'd spent years watching people lie. "Ms. Dawson?" He didn't move to block her path, just stood with his hands in his pockets, unthreatening but unmistakably purposeful. "I'm hoping you have a few minutes to talk." Lily's heart slammed against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral. Victor had prepared her for this. Stay calm, admit nothing, volunteer nothing. "I'm on my way to work. You'll have to make an appointment." "I tried. Your office said you weren't taking meetings with anyone outside approved contacts." His smile was mild, professional. "I represent the Caldwell family. I'm investigating the disappearance of Ryan Caldwell. I understand you worked the Metropolitan Art Gala the night he went missing." "I worked that event, along with about 40 other staff members. I don't remember seeing Mr. Caldwell specifically." The lie came easily, mechanically, exactly as she'd practiced. "That's interesting, because a waiter remembers you going into the Vanderbilt VIP suite around 10:30 that evening, the same suite Ryan had reserved. He remembers you coming out looking distressed." Brennan's voice remained pleasant, conversational. "He also remembers Victor Hale finding you in a storage room shortly after." "I felt ill. Mr. Hale was kind enough to arrange transportation home. If that's suspicious to you, I can't help you." She moved past him toward the street, but his next word stopped her cold. "Mr. Hale paid off your mother's medical debt the next morning. $700,000 in outstanding bills, cleared in a single transaction through a foundation he controls. Quite generous for someone who just happened to find a sick employee." Lily turned slowly. "My mother's medical care is none of your business. It becomes my business when it establishes a pattern. Mr. Hale takes unusual interest in you. Within days, 5 men, including Ryan Caldwell, disappear without a trace. All 5 were at that gala. All 5 left in a similar time frame. And you, Ms. Dawson, suddenly have a new job working directly for Mr. Hale at a foundation that didn't exist before the gala." Brennan pulled out a small notebook. "I'm good at patterns. This one suggests something happened that night. Something that connected you, Ryan Caldwell, and Victor Hale in a way that resulted in 5 disappearances." "That's an incredible conspiracy theory." Lily kept her voice steady, despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Maybe those men just decided to leave. Rich people do impulsive things all the time." 5 men simultaneously, all with similar backgrounds and behavioral patterns? Brennan shook his head. "I don't believe in coincidence, Ms. Dawson. And neither should you. Whatever happened that night, whatever Ryan did to make you look so distressed, whatever Victor Hale did in response, it's going to come out. It always does. The only question is whether you get ahead of it or let it destroy you." "I have nothing to say to you." Lily pulled out her phone. "And if you contact me again without a lawyer present, I'll file harassment charges." "Fair enough." Brennan handed her a business card. "When you're ready to talk, and you will be eventually, call me. I can help you. Victor Hale is a dangerous man to be indebted to. Whatever hold he has over you, it's not worth your freedom." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with his card burning in her hand and her carefully constructed composure cracking at the edges. She called Victor before she'd made it to the subway. "Brennan approached you." Not a question. Victor's voice was tight, controlled. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. Exactly what you said to say. But he knows, Victor. Maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous." She ducked into a coffee shop, needing privacy. "He mentioned the medical debt, my new job, the timeline. He's building a case. He's building speculation. Without evidence, that's all it is." Papers rustled in the background. "Come to the office. We need to strategize." "I'm scared." The admission came out before she could stop it. Victor's voice softened marginally. "I know, but fear is useful if we channel it correctly. Come in. We'll handle this together." The office felt different when she arrived, charged with a tension that hadn't existed before. Grace met her at the elevator with coffee and a grim expression. Victor's in the war room. He's been there since 5 a.m. The war room was a conference space Lily had never entered before, its windows tinted for privacy, its walls lined with monitors and secure communication equipment. Victor stood at the head of the table with Marcus and Aisha, the three of them studying what looked like surveillance footage and document scans. "Lily," Victor gestured her over, "tell us exactly what Brennan said, word for word." She recounted the conversation, watching as Aisha took notes, and Marcus's expression grew darker. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. "He's fishing," Marcus said finally. "He has timeline and circumstantial connections, but nothing concrete. No evidence of crime, no witnesses to anything actionable. If he had real proof, he'd have gone to the police already." "Unless he's building the case first," Aisha countered. "Brennan's reputation suggests he's thorough. He won't move until he's certain he can make charges stick. Then we ensure he never reaches that certainty." Victor's tone was flat, final. "Aisha, I need you to find out exactly what Brennan knows. Who he's talked to, what evidence he's collected, how close he is to connecting dots we can't afford connected." "Already on it. I have contacts who can access his files." Aisha glanced at Lily. "How much does he know about what actually happened in that VIP room?" Lily's throat tightened. "I never filed a report. Never told anyone except Victor. If the waiter didn't see anything specific, there's no evidence Ryan assaulted me." "Good. Keep it that way." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "The assault gives Victor motive. Without proof it happened, Brennan can't establish why Victor would have reason to act against Ryan specifically." "But he knows something happened," Lily insisted. "He saw it in my face when he mentioned Ryan's name. He's not stupid." "Knowing and proving are different things." Victor moved to stand beside her, his presence solid and grounding. "Brennan can suspect all he wants. Without evidence, he has nothing." The meeting continued for another hour. Strategies layered on contingencies, layered on backup plans. By the time they broke, Lily's head was spinning with the complexity of what they were managing. Cover stories, alibi timelines, document trails that led nowhere. It was exhausting and terrifying, and she was in far deeper than she'd ever imagined. "Walk with me," Victor said as the others dispersed. Not to the street this time, but to his private office. He closed the door behind them, engaged the lock, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked tired. "I underestimated how persistent Caldwell would be," he said quietly. "I should have anticipated he'd hire someone like Brennan, should have created more distance between you and the Foundation." "It's not your fault." Lily sank into the chair facing his desk. "I made my choices. I knew the risks." "Did you?" He studied her with those pale gray eyes. "Did you really understand what you were signing up for? Or did you just see a way to help your mother and grab it without thinking about the long-term consequences?" The question stung because it was partially true. She'd been desperate, traumatized, focused on immediate survival rather than future implications. "Maybe I didn't think it through completely, but I'm here now. I'm committed. And I'm not backing down just because some investigator is asking questions." Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle of expensive whiskey, and poured 2 glasses. Handed her one. To moral compromise and the people brave enough to live with it. She clinked her glass against his and drank. The whiskey burned going down, smooth and expensive and nothing like the cheap vodka she used to buy. "What happens if Brennan does find proof? If he connects everything and goes to the authorities? Then I take the fall, completely. You were an employee who knew nothing, a victim I helped out of genuine concern. My lawyers will create a narrative that protects you entirely. I won't let you do that. You don't have a choice. I have resources to fight this. Lawyers who can tie up investigations for years, money to make problems disappear. You have none of that. If we both go down, it helps no one." He set his glass down with careful precision. "But it won't come to that. Brennan is good, but he's not that good. We've covered our tracks too well." Lily wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in the careful planning, the layers of protection, the resources that made men like Victor Hale essentially untouchable. But she'd also learned that privilege only protected you until someone more privileged decided otherwise. And the Caldwell family had the kind of old money that could move mountains. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it and felt her blood turn to ice. A photo. Her, leaving the Vanderbilt VIP suite at the gala. The timestamp showed 10:47 p.m. Her face was partially visible, enough to identify her, and even in the grainy security footage, her distress was obvious. Torn uniform, disheveled hair, the unmistakable look of someone who'd just survived something terrible. The message below the photo. The truth always surfaces. Last chance to talk before I take this to the police. TB. She showed Victor without speaking. His expression went cold, calculated, dangerous in a way that would have terrified her weeks ago. Now it just made her feel marginally safer. He got access to the gala's security footage. Victor pulled out his own phone, typing rapidly. That should have been wiped weeks ago. Someone either failed to follow through or was paid to preserve it. What do? We call his bluff. Victor's voice was ice. Brennan sends this to the police. They'll ask questions. Why you look distressed? What happened in that room? Those questions lead to Ryan Caldwell and what he did, which means Ryan becomes the subject of an assault investigation, not a missing person case. Brennan doesn't want that. Neither does the Caldwell family. This photo damages Ryan's reputation more than it helps their case. Lily stared at the image. She'd never seen this moment from outside her own traumatized perspective. Seeing herself like this, small, frightened, broken, made rage flare hot and fresh in her chest. I want him to hurt more, she said quietly. Ryan, wherever he is, whatever he's doing, I want him to suffer every single day for the rest of his life. He is. Victor's hand covered hers, warm and solid. Every morning when he wakes up in a hostile environment where his name means nothing. Every night when he goes to sleep knowing he's expendable. Every moment he spends doing actual work instead of coasting on inherited privilege. He's suffering, Lily. I promise you that. It's not enough. It never will be. That's the thing about trauma. No amount of justice ever completely balances the scales. He squeezed her hand once, then released it. But it's more than he would have faced otherwise. More than the system ever would have given you. She knew he was right. Knew that in any normal scenario, Ryan would have walked away clean. Would have assaulted more women, would have lived his entire life without facing consequences. This was better. Had to be better. Her phone buzzed again. Brennan. Well? Victor took her phone from her hands and typed a response. Send the photo to whoever you want. All it proves is that I left a room looking upset. Not illegal, not evidence of anything except that wealthy people make event staff uncomfortable. Do your worst. He hit send before she could protest, then powered her phone off entirely. Don't respond to him again. Don't engage. He's trying to pressure you into making a mistake. What if he really does go to the police? Then we deal with it. But I don't think he will. Not yet. He's still hoping you'll crack. Give him something concrete. When that doesn't happen, he'll either give up or try a different approach. Victor stood, moving back to the window with his whiskey. In the meantime, we continue our work. We help the women who need it. We don't let Brennan's intimidation tactics derail what we've built. Lily joined him at the window, looking out at Manhattan spread below them like a game board. Somewhere out there, Thomas Brennan was building his case, connecting dots, searching for the evidence that would bring everything crashing down. Somewhere else, Ryan Caldwell was suffering through another day of consequences. And here, in this office, she stood beside a man who'd upended her entire world and given her purpose in the wreckage. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. About that night. About what actually happened in the VIP room. Victor's reflection in the glass went very still. You don't have to. I do. Because you've risked everything to help me and you deserve to know the full truth. She took a breath. Ryan didn't just assault me. He would have raped me if those men hadn't interrupted. Your men, I'm assuming. They pulled him off me and got him out. I don't know if you sent them or if it was coincidence, but they saved me from something worse. Not coincidence. Victor's voice was rough. I have security at events I attend. They're instructed to watch for situations that seem wrong. When you went into that room and didn't come out, when Ryan locked the door, they alerted me. I sent them in. Lily turned to face him fully. You knew. Even before you found me in the storage room, you knew something had happened. I suspected. The security team reported that Ryan was agitated, that he'd fought when they removed him, that you'd been hurt. That's why I came looking for you. His jaw tightened. I should have moved faster, should have prevented it entirely. You saved me from the worst of it. That counts. She paused. Is that why you did all of this? Because you felt responsible? Initially, yes. I failed to protect you completely, and I don't tolerate failure. But then I met you, saw your strength, your resilience, your refusal to be destroyed by what happened. That's when it became about more than guilt. He met her eyes steadily. That's when I realized I didn't just want to help you. I wanted you to help me build something that mattered. The honesty in his voice made something shift in Lily's chest. She'd spent weeks thinking of Victor as a means to an end, a powerful ally in a war against systemic injustice. But standing here, seeing vulnerability beneath the cold control, she recognized something else, something more complicated and potentially dangerous. We should get back to work, she said, breaking the moment before it could grow into something she wasn't ready to name. Right, work. But Victor's expression suggested he'd felt it too, whatever it was that had just sparked between them. The rest of the day passed in focused intensity. Lily met with Rebecca Torres via video call, walking her through the strategy to remove her CEO from power. Rebecca cried when Lily explained how thoroughly they'd documented his pattern of abuse, how many other women had agreed to testify once they knew they'd be protected, how the board was already being pressured to act. He told me no one would believe me, Rebecca said, wiping her eyes. He said his lawyers would destroy me if I ever spoke up. His lawyers are very good. Ours are better. Lily felt fierce satisfaction saying it. By the end of the month, he'll be gone, and you'll be free to speak publicly about what he did. NDA be damned. We've found the legal loopholes. You're protected. After the call ended, Grace appeared with updates on 3 other cases. A college student whose rapist was being quietly expelled despite his father's threats to sue. A nurse whose assault complaint had triggered an actual police investigation after Victor's team provided corroborating evidence. A teacher who'd been fired for reporting harassment and was now being reinstated with back pay and a formal apology. Small victories. Individual lives shifted back toward justice. It wasn't enough to change the whole system, but it was something. And today, with Brendan's threats hanging over her head, Lily needed to remember why she'd chosen this path. Around 6, Victor knocked on her office door. Come to dinner with me. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a demand either. Lily looked up from the case file she'd been reviewing. Is this about work? No. This is about the fact that you've been here since 8 this morning and you need to eat something that isn't vending machine coffee. He leaned against her doorframe, hands in his pockets. Also, I could use the company. Days like this remind me why I usually eat alone. She should say no, should maintain professional boundaries, keep their relationship strictly about the foundation and the work. But she was tired and stressed, and the thought of going home to her empty apartment to worry about Brennan's investigation held zero appeal. Where? She asked. Somewhere quiet, where we can talk without worrying about who's listening. He pushed off the doorframe. Trust me. The restaurant was tucked into a basement in the West Village, the kind of place with no sign and reservations booked months in advance. But Victor walked in like he owned it, which Lily was learning he probably did, and they were immediately escorted to a private dining room in the back. You really don't do anything halfway, do you? Lily said as a waiter appeared with wine she definitely couldn't pronounce. Life's too short for half measures. Victor waited until they were alone before continuing. I wanted to apologize for dragging you into this situation with Brennan. You signed up to help survivors, not dodge investigators. The two seem fairly interconnected in your world. She sipped the wine. It was predictably excellent. Besides, I knew what I was getting into, maybe not the specifics, but the general moral ambiguity. Moral ambiguity? That's a generous way to describe conspiracy to kidnap. His smile was wry. You're getting better at the euphemisms. I'm learning from the best. She set her glass down. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I may not answer. What happened after Elena died? I know it changed you, pushed you into this work, but what actually happened in that time between her death and when you started the foundation. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, I hunted down the man who assaulted her. Took me 6 months to find him. He'd moved to California, changed his name, was working in tech and dating someone new, living his best life while my sister was dead. Lily's breath caught. What did you do to him? I destroyed his life. Methodically, completely. Got him fired from his job by exposing his past. Tanked his credit. Made sure every new employer who Googled his name found carefully seeded articles about his history. Drove him to bankruptcy, isolation, and eventually a very public breakdown. Victor's voice remained calm, factual. He's alive. Working minimum wage, living in a halfway house, probably will be for the rest of his life. No one to blame but himself. That's... Lily struggled for words. That's incredibly vindictive. Yes, it's also justice. The police never charged him. The system never held him accountable. So I did. He met her eyes steadily. I learned something important from that experience. The system only works if you have power. If you don't, you need someone with power willing to fight for you. That's what the foundation is. That's what we do. And the 5 men, that was the same logic? Escalated, but yes. I learned from Elena's situation that destroying someone's life in their own environment isn't enough. They rebuild. They find new victims. True consequences require complete removal from the system that enabled them. He paused. I'm not proud of what I've become, Lily, but I'm not ashamed either. I sleep fine at night knowing that predators are facing real consequences for the first time in their lives. The food arrived. Small, artistic plates that tasted like they'd been crafted by someone who viewed cooking as high art. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the weight of the day's stress gradually easing. What about you? Victor asked eventually. What would you have become if Ryan Caldwell hadn't attacked you, if I hadn't offered you this job? Lily considered the question. Probably still coordinating events, still struggling to pay my mother's bills, still invisible and exhausted and angry at how unfair everything was. She pushed food around her plate. This path is harder in some ways, more complicated, but at least it means something. You would have found meaning eventually. You're too smart and too driven to stay invisible forever. Maybe. Or maybe I would have been just another casualty of a system designed to crush people like me. She met his gaze. Thank you for seeing something in me worth investing in, even if your methods are terrifying. You're welcome. And for what it's worth, my investment is paying off. The work you've done these past few weeks has been exceptional. He raised his glass. To exceptional women and the men smart enough to get out of their way. She clinked her glass against his, smiling despite everything. That's the first time you've said something that sounds remotely feminist. I contain multitudes. Ruthless criminal mastermind and occasional feminist ally. His expression turned serious. Lily, whatever happens with Brennan, whatever comes next, I want you to know that protecting you is my priority. The foundation, the other cases, even my own legal exposure, all of it is secondary to ensuring you come through this safely. Why? The question came out softer than she intended. Why do I matter so much to you? Victor was quiet for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Because you remind me of Elena. The strength, the resilience, the absolute refusal to let trauma define you. Because you're the first person in years who's pushed back on my methods while still understanding why they're necessary. Because, he stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Because you matter, that's all. The air between them felt charged, heavy with things unsaid. Lily knew she should change the subject, steer them back to safer professional ground. Instead, she heard herself say, You matter to me too, more than I expected. More than is probably wise. Probably not wise at all, Victor agreed quietly. But wisdom is overrated. They finished dinner in a silence that felt different than before, loaded with awareness and possibility, and the complicated recognition that somewhere along the way, their relationship had shifted into territory neither of them had planned for. Victor's driver took her home afterward, the city lights blurring past the tinted windows. Lily's phone, still powered off since Victor had sent that last message to Brennan, sat heavy in her pocket. She knew she should turn it on, check for messages, face whatever Brennan's response had been. But tonight, she just wanted to exist in the quiet space between the crisis and the consequences. Her apartment felt smaller than usual when she let herself in, cramped and shabby compared to the restaurants and offices she'd inhabited today. But it was hers. Proof that she'd survived, built something, climbed out of the hole circumstances had dug for her. She powered on her phone. 3 missed calls from Brennan, 2 voicemails, and 1 text. Think carefully about where your loyalty lies. Hale will sacrifice you the moment it's convenient. I can offer protection, real protection. Call me. Lily deleted the message without responding. Brennan was wrong about Victor. She knew it the same way she knew her own name. Victor might be ruthless, might operate outside the law, might make choices that terrified her, but he wouldn't sacrifice her. Not after everything, not when she'd seen the vulnerability beneath the control, the grief driving his mission, the genuine care in how he'd protected her from the start. She fell asleep that night thinking about the private dining room, Victor's confession about destroying Elena's attacker, and the way his expression had shifted when he'd said she mattered. Thinking about how far she'd come from that storage room, from the broken woman who'd thought her world was ending, thinking about how the ending had actually been a beginning, and how sometimes the people who saved you were the ones you least expected. Her phone rang at 3 a.m. Victor. She answered immediately, heart pounding. What's wrong? Brennan went to the police, filed a formal complaint alleging my involvement in the disappearances. They're opening an investigation. His voice was steady, calm, but she could hear the tension underneath. I need you to come to the office. Now. We need to coordinate our response before they start questioning us. Lily was already pulling on clothes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Good. Lily? He paused. Don't panic. We anticipated this. We're prepared. Everything is going to be fine. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in this careful planning, the layers of protection, the resources that made men like Victor essentially untouchable. But she'd also learned that nothing was certain, that power only protected you until someone with more power decided otherwise. I'll see you soon, she said, and hung up before the fear in her voice could betray how terrified she actually was. The war had finally come to their doorstep, and Lily had no idea if they were prepared enough to survive it. The office was already blazing with light when Lily arrived. Victor's entire legal team assembled in the war room like generals preparing for battle. She'd thrown on jeans and a sweater, hadn't bothered with makeup, and felt distinctly underdressed among the suits and briefcases. But no one seemed to notice or care. Victor stood at the head of the table, his shirt sleeves rolled up, tie discarded, looking more dangerous than she'd ever seen him. He glanced up when she entered, and something in his expression softened marginally. Good. You're here. Marcus, brief her. Marcus gestured to the documents spread across the table. Brennan filed his complaint 2 hours ago. The police are taking it seriously because of the Caldwell family's influence, but they don't have much to work with. No bodies, no crime scenes, no direct evidence linking Victor to the disappearances. What they do have is timeline, motive, and Brennan's speculation. What's our exposure? Lily asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. Minimal if everyone sticks to the script, Isha said from across the table. We've created paper trails showing all 5 men left the country voluntarily. Bank transactions, email communications, travel reservations. Everything points to them making independent decisions to pursue business opportunities abroad. The police will question those trails, Lily said. They're not stupid. No, but they're bound by evidence standards we're not. Victor moved to stand beside her, his presence grounding. They need proof beyond reasonable doubt. We just need reasonable doubt. And we have plenty of that. Grace entered carrying coffee and what looked like prepared statements. The detectives want to interview both of you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the precinct. I've arranged for Victor's attorney to be present, and Lily, you'll have separate representation. Michael Chen, no relation to Margaret, specializes in protecting witnesses. He's the best. Witnesses. Lily's stomach tightened. They think I witnessed something. They think you're a victim Victor is protecting. That narrative works for us. Marcus pulled up a document on his tablet. You were assaulted by Ryan Caldwell. Victor, as a concerned citizen who happened to witness the aftermath, provided support including medical care for your mother and employment opportunities. Everything else is speculation. What about the photo Brennan has? Me leaving that room looking distressed? Supports our narrative perfectly, Victor said calmly. It shows you were hurt. It doesn't show who hurt you or what I did about it. If anything, it establishes why I had reason to help you. Lily sat down heavily in one of the conference chairs. This is insane. We're creating an entire false narrative and expecting the police to just accept it. We're creating a plausible narrative that happens to protect the truth they can't prove. Victor's hand came to rest on her shoulder, warm and solid. The justice system runs on stories, Lily. Whichever side tells the most convincing story wins. We have resources, preparation, and the advantage of knowing exactly what happened. Brennan has conspiracy theories and circumstantial connections. What if I crack during questioning? What if I say something that contradicts the timeline? You won't. His voice carried absolute certainty. Because you're stronger than you think, and because you understand what's at stake. Not just for us, but for every woman the Foundation helps. If this investigation destroys what we've built, those women lose their support system. Their only chance at real justice disappears. The weight of that responsibility settled over her like a physical thing. Sarah Mitchell, finishing her nursing degree. Rebecca Torres, watching her abuser finally face consequences. The 19 women whose attackers were gone forever. All of it balanced on her ability to sit across from detectives tomorrow and lie convincingly about things that mattered more than anything in her life. They spent the next 4 hours rehearsing. Marcus played the detective, asking questions designed to trip her up, find inconsistencies, create doubt. Lily answered again and again until the responses felt natural, automatic, true. Yes, she'd been assaulted. No, she never saw who did it clearly. The room was dim, she was disoriented, everything happened so fast. Yes, Victor Hale had helped her afterward. No, she had no knowledge of what happened to Ryan Caldwell or any other men. Yes, she was grateful for the Foundation's support. No, there was no quid pro quo, no expectation of silence or loyalty beyond normal employment. By the time they broke at dawn, Lily could recite her story in her sleep, could feel the truth of it settling into her bones, even though she knew, they all knew, it was built on carefully constructed omissions and technical honesty that skirted the edges of perjury. Victor walked her to the elevator as the others dispersed to catch a few hours of sleep before the interviews. You did well tonight. Better than well. You're a natural at this. I'm not sure that's a compliment. She leaned against the elevator wall, exhausted beyond measure. Learning to lie convincingly to police doesn't feel like a skill I should be proud of. It's not lying, it's strategic truth-telling. There's a difference. He stepped into the elevator with her, pressed the button for the parking garage. I'm having Sarah drive you home. Get some rest. Real rest. Don't think about tomorrow. Don't rehearse anymore. Just sleep. Will you sleep? Eventually. His smile was tired. I have a few more contingencies to arrange first. The elevator descended in silence. When the doors opened, Sarah was already waiting by the Mercedes. But before Lily could step out, Victor's hand caught her arm gently. Lily, whatever happens tomorrow, whatever they ask or imply or threaten, remember that you're not alone in this. I won't let them destroy you to get to me. That's a promise. She wanted to ask how he could make that promise, what power he had to protect her from a police investigation. But the certainty in his eyes stopped the question. She simply nodded, let him guide her to the car, and tried not to think about the fact that in less than 12 hours, she'd be sitting in an interrogation room lying to law enforcement about crimes that could send them both to prison for decades. Sarah drove her home in understanding silence. Lily stumbled up to her apartment, fell into bed fully clothed, and expected to lie awake worrying until her alarm went off. Instead, exhaustion claimed her immediately, dragging her into dreamless black. She woke to her phone ringing. Not her alarm, a call. Her mother. Lily? Her voice was stronger than it had been in months, vibrant with excitement. Sweetheart, Dr. Richardson just gave me the results. The treatment worked. I'm in remission. Complete remission. Lily sat up, her mind struggling to process the words. What? Mom, that's incredible. I know. I can hardly believe it myself. She says if the next few scans stay clear, I might be able to go home next month. Actually, home, not just for visits. Her mother's voice cracked with joy. You saved my life, Lily. I don't know how you managed all this, but you saved my life. Tears were streaming down Lily's face before she realized she was crying. You saved yourself, Mom. You fought so hard. We both did. Together. A pause. Are you okay? You sound off. I'm fine, just emotional. This is the best news I've had in years. She wiped her eyes, glancing at the clock. 7 a.m. 2 hours until she had to be at the precinct. 2 hours until everything either held together or fell apart. Listen, I have to go, but I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. Love you too, sweetheart. We'll celebrate properly soon. Maybe finally go to that Italian place you've been promising to take me to. After they hung up, Lily sat in bed staring at her hands. Her mother was in remission. The treatment that wouldn't have been possible without Victor's intervention had worked. One life saved, one woman given a second chance, and all it cost was Lily's willingness to become complicit in methods the law would call kidnapping. Was it worth it? Was her mother's life worth the moral compromise, the lies she was about to tell, the future she was risking? The answer came immediately, certain and absolute yes. 1,000 times yes. She'd burn the whole world down to keep her mother alive, and if that made her a criminal by legal standards, so be it. She showered, dressed in clothes Michael Chen's office had sent over, professional but not expensive, approachable but not weak, and met the lawyer in the precinct lobby at 8:45. He was younger than she expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a handshake that conveyed confidence without arrogance. Ms. Dawson, I'm Michael. We're going to walk in there, answer their questions honestly within the parameters we discussed, and walk back out. Nothing dramatic, nothing scary, just a conversation. A conversation where I'm potentially implicating myself in multiple felonies. A conversation where you're being honest about your experience while declining to speculate about things you don't know. He guided her toward the interview rooms. Remember, you're not under arrest. You're here voluntarily. If at any point you're uncomfortable, we leave. That's your right. The detective waiting for them was a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much human ugliness. She introduced herself as Detective Sarah Martinez, gestured for them to sit, and laid out the basics of the interview with professional efficiency. Ms. Dawson, I want to be clear that you're not a suspect. We believe you may have information relevant to an ongoing investigation into the disappearance of 5 men, including Ryan Caldwell. Anything you tell us is voluntary, and you're free to leave at any time. Do you understand? I understand. Lily's voice came out steadier than she felt. Good. Let's start with the night of the Metropolitan Art Gala. You were working that event? Yes. I was an event coordinator for Chen Premier Events. And at some point during the evening, you entered the Vanderbilt FIV-YP suite? Yes. Around 10:30. My supervisor asked me to refresh the room for a private party. Martinez pulled out a tablet, showed her the security footage Brennan had obtained, Lily leaving the room visibly distressed. Can you tell me what happened in that suite? Lily took a breath, channeling every rehearsal from last night. I was attacked. A man, I didn't see his face clearly, the lighting was dim. He grabbed me when I entered, tried to... She let her voice break slightly, let real emotion from that night surface. He tried to force himself on me. I fought back. Hit him, I think. Then some men in suits came in and pulled him off. They got him out of the room. I ran. You ran to a storage closet? Yes, I couldn't think clearly. I just needed somewhere safe. And Victor Hale found you there? Yes. He was kind. Asked if I was okay, if I needed medical attention. I said no. I just wanted to go home. He arranged for his driver to take me. Martinez made notes, her expression neutral. Did Mr. Hale ask you who attacked you? Yes. I told him I didn't see clearly enough to identify anyone. But you did see. The lighting was dim but not completely dark. You fought with your attacker. You must have some impression of who it was. Michael leaned forward. Detective, my client has stated she couldn't identify her attacker. Whether that's due to lighting, stress, trauma, or simple lack of clear visual contact, the result is the same. She doesn't know. Martinez's eyes never left Lily's face. Dawson, we have evidence suggesting Ryan Caldwell was in that suite around the same time you were. We have a waiter who saw you go in shortly after him. We have your distressed appearance on camera. And we have the fact that Ryan Caldwell disappeared that same night, along with 4 other men who have documented histories of sexual misconduct. Do you see how that looks? I see how it might look suspicious, but I can't tell you something I don't know. I was attacked. I don't know for certain who did it, and I have no knowledge of what happened to anyone after that night. What about your relationship with Victor Hale? He paid your mother's medical bills, gave you a high-paying job at a foundation that didn't exist before the gala. That's quite generous for a stranger. Mr. Hale runs a charitable foundation dedicated to helping survivors of sexual assault. I qualified for that help. He offered employment because I have relevant experience, and he needed someone to run the program. If you're implying there's something inappropriate about receiving support after being attacked, I strongly disagree. Martinez leaned back, studying her. I'm implying that a very wealthy, very connected man took unusual interest in you immediately after an incident involving someone who then vanished. I'm implying that maybe he asked you questions you've claimed you didn't answer. Maybe you gave him a name. Maybe he decided to do something about it. Detective. Michael's voice went hard. Unless you're accusing my client of a crime, these implications are inappropriate. She's answered your questions honestly. She was a victim of assault. She received support from a legitimate charitable organization. Everything else is speculation. Is it? Martinez pulled out more documents. We've been investigating the 5 missing men. All of them left the country within 48 hours of the gala. All of them sent emails to family about sudden business opportunities. All of them withdrew cash from ATMs in different cities before their flights. All of those actions can be faked. IP addresses spoofed, ATM footage digitally altered, travel documents forged, and all of it requires resources, connections, and technical expertise that Victor Hale absolutely has. Lily felt ice in her veins but kept her expression neutral. I wouldn't know anything about that. I'm not a computer expert or a private investigator. I run a nonprofit helping assault survivors. A nonprofit funded entirely by Victor Hale. A nonprofit that just happened to be founded days after 5 men disappeared. Martinez leaned forward. Ms. Dawson, I believe you were attacked. I believe Ryan Caldwell probably did it. And I believe Victor Hale decided to handle it his own way instead of going through proper channels. If that's what happened, you're not the criminal here. You're another victim being used by a man with too much power and too little regard for the law. With respect, Detective, you're wrong about Mr. Hale. He hasn't used me. He's helped me. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you're risking obstruction charges, possibly accessory charges, to protect a man who's made 5 people disappear. That doesn't sound like help. That sounds like manipulation. Michael stood. We're done here. My client has been cooperative and honest. Unless you have evidence of actual wrongdoing, not speculation, not implications, but evidence, we're leaving. Martinez's jaw tightened. We're not finished investigating. This conversation isn't over. It is for today. Michael guided Lily toward the door. If you have further questions, contact me. Don't approach my client directly. They walked out of the precinct into cold morning air that felt like freedom. Lily's hands were shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system now that the immediate danger had passed. Michael steered her to a coffee shop across the street, ordered them both drinks she didn't taste, and waited until she'd stopped trembling before speaking. You did perfectly. Better than perfectly. Martinez pushed hard and you didn't crack. She knows, though. She knows we're lying. Knowing and proving are different things. She has no evidence, no witnesses, no physical proof, just a theory that 5 wealthy men decided to vanish, and a woman who runs a foundation funded by someone with means. He sipped his coffee. They'll keep investigating, but unless they find something concrete, which they won't because Victor is meticulous, eventually they'll have to close the case. How long is eventually? Months, probably. Maybe longer if the Caldwell family keeps pushing. But you just have to maintain your story. Don't deviate. Don't add new details. Just stay consistent. Lily nodded numbly. Her phone buzzed. Victor. How did it go? Good, I think. I didn't break. But Martinez knows we're hiding something. Of course she does. She's smart. But smart isn't enough without proof. A pause. Can you come to the office? There's something I need to show you. 20 minutes later, she was back in Victor's office. He looked like he hadn't slept at all, shadows under his eyes and tension in his shoulders. But his expression when he saw her was pure relief. "Lily, you were brilliant. Michael said you handled Martinez perfectly." "I lied to a police officer. I don't feel brilliant." "You protected yourself and the work we're doing. That takes courage." He moved to his desk, pulled out a tablet, and handed it to her. "This might help with the guilt." The screen showed an email from Ryan Caldwell, sent yesterday. She read it twice, her throat tightening. It was a confession. Not about the assault, that wasn't mentioned, but about his life before, the privilege he'd taken for granted, the women he'd hurt without consequence, about how the last months had taught him what real work meant, what accountability looked like, what it felt like to be powerless and afraid, about how he was sorry, how he understood, finally, that his actions had destroyed lives. He wrote this? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. They all did. Part of their contracts requires regular reflection journals. This one came through yesterday. Victor's expression was unreadable. "I'm not saying he's redeemed. One email doesn't undo the damage he caused. But it's something. Evidence that consequences can create change, even in people who seemed incapable of it." Lily read it a third time, searching for manipulation or insincerity. Found only exhaustion and what looked like genuine remorse. What happens to him now? To all of them? They serve their time, 5 years minimum. If they complete their contracts without incident, they get to come home. Changed men, hopefully. If not, he shrugged, then they stay until they are. And the investigation? Martinez isn't going to give up. No, but she's also bound by evidence standards we've made sure she can't meet. The investigation will eventually go cold. The Caldwell family will move on. Life will continue. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "We survived the first battle, Lily. We'll survive whatever comes next." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the careful planning and expensive lawyers and layers of protection would hold. But she'd also learned that nothing was certain, that power only protected you until someone with more power decided otherwise. What if they find something we missed, some thread we didn't tie off? Then we adapt, respond, fight harder. His hand came to rest on her shoulder. But I don't think they will. We've been too careful. The weeks that followed proved him right. The investigation continued, but produced nothing concrete. Martinez interviewed Victor, his legal team, his security personnel. She examined financial records, travel documents, security footage. She followed every lead Brennan provided and several she developed independently, and found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. Every trail led to legitimate business transactions. Every email was properly spoofed. Every travel record showed men making voluntary choices to pursue opportunities abroad. The only evidence of crime was in knowing what lay beneath the surface, and knowing wasn't enough. By month 3, the case was quietly downgraded. Still open, but no longer active. The Caldwell family hired additional investigators, threw more money at the problem. But money couldn't conjure evidence that didn't exist. By month 6, even they began to move on. Lily watched it happen from her office at the foundation, which had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. They'd helped 43 women in 6 months, secured restraining orders, funded therapy, provided job placement, facilitated testifying against abusers who'd previously seemed untouchable. The Justice Initiative had become exactly what Victor promised, a real chance at justice for women the system had abandoned. And somewhere along the way, something else had grown too, something she'd been avoiding acknowledging even as it became increasingly obvious. She was falling for Victor Hale. Not the smooth professional version he showed the world, not even the ruthless vigilante who made predators disappear, but the man underneath all of that. The one who'd lost his sister and channeled his grief into purpose. The one who remembered every detail about the women they helped. The one who looked at Lily like she was the most important person in any room. It happened gradually, then all at once. Late nights strategizing over case files, quiet dinners where they talked about everything except work, the way his hand would find hers when she was stressed, the way his expression softened when she walked into a room, the way he looked at her one evening, 7 months after the gala, and said, "I think I'm in love with you. I didn't plan for it, wasn't looking for it, but there it is." They were in his office, alone. The city spread out below them in a carpet of lights. Lily's breath caught, her heart hammering against her ribs. Victor, you don't have to say anything. I know it's complicated. I know I'm probably the last person you should get involved with, but I needed you to know, needed you to understand why I've been so protective, why your safety matters more to me than the foundation or the cases or even my own legal exposure. Lily crossed the space between them, her decision made before she consciously registered making it. I love you too. I have for weeks, maybe longer. I was just too scared to admit it. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite their capacity for violence. Why scared? Because loving you means accepting everything you are, everything you've done, everything we might have to do in the future. It means choosing to live in the gray forever. And can you do that? Can you love someone who operates outside the law, who makes choices most people would call monstrous? She thought about her mother, healthy and thriving. About Sarah Mitchell and Rebecca Torres and 41 other women whose lives had been changed. About Ryan Caldwell's email, evidence that even the worst people could be forced to grow. About the choice between purity and effectiveness, between moral comfort and actual justice. Yes, she said simply, because the alternative is a world where predators win and victims suffer and no one with power cares enough to stop it. I'd rather live in the gray with you than in the black and white without you. He kissed her then, and Lily felt something shift and settle in her chest. This was her life now, her choice, her future. Complicated and morally ambiguous and absolutely completely right. The investigation finally closed officially at the 10-month mark. Insufficient evidence. Case unsolved. The 5 missing men remain missing, their families left with questions but no answers. The media coverage faded. Life moved on. Lily's mother came home from the hospital, cancer-free and determined to make up for lost time. She met Victor over dinner at that Italian place they'd promised to visit, and afterward told Lily quietly, "He's intense, probably dangerous. But he looks at you like you're the only thing in the world that matters. Don't let him go." "I won't," Lily promised. The foundation continued growing. By the 1-year mark, they'd helped over 100 women, changed laws, exposed predators, created real, lasting change. And Lily had found her purpose, not despite the trauma she'd endured, but because of it. The proposal happened on a quiet Sunday morning in Victor's apartment, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee cooling on the counter. Nothing dramatic or public. Just Victor looking at her with those gray eyes she'd once found terrifying and now found grounding, saying, "Marry me, not because you owe me or because I saved you, but because we're better together than apart. Because you make me want to be worthy of the faith you've placed in me." Lily said yes before he finished talking, before doubt could creep in, before the rational part of her brain could list all the reasons this was complicated and difficult and potentially disastrous. She said yes because she loved him, because he'd seen her at her most broken and chosen to help her rebuild, because they'd created something meaningful from the wreckage of trauma, because choosing him meant choosing purpose over safety. And she'd made that choice the moment she gave him Ryan's name. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony, just close friends and family. Grace served as her maid of honor. Marcus gave a toast about moral courage and the people brave enough to choose effectiveness over purity. Her mother cried happy tears and told them both they were perfect for each other. The Caldwell investigation was mentioned exactly once that day by a guest who didn't know better. Victor shut it down with calm finality. That case is closed. Ancient history. Today is about the future. And it was. The future they were building together, helping survivors, exposing predators, creating justice where the system failed. The foundation expanded into other cities, helped other women, changed other lives. Lily became recognized in advocacy circles as a fierce voice for survivors, though few knew the full extent of the methods she endorsed. Ryan Caldwell completed his 5-year contract and returned to the States a different person. Broke, humbled, working construction and living in a studio apartment. He never contacted Lily, never tried to rebuild his old life. Just existed quietly, a shadow of the privileged predator he'd been. The other 4 men followed similar paths. Some thrived in their new circumstances. Others struggled. All of them learned what consequences felt like. 2 years after the wedding, Lily stood in her office overlooking Manhattan and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From invisible event coordinator to foundation director, from victim to advocate, from broken to whole. Her phone buzzed. Victor, checking in from a meeting across town. How's your day? Good. Just closed the Morrison case. Full conviction, maximum sentence. Excellent. Dinner tonight to celebrate? Always. She set her phone down and looked at the photo on her desk. Her and Victor on their wedding day, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling like they'd won some impossible victory. Which, in a way, they had. They'd survived trauma, built something meaningful, found love in the gray spaces between law and justice, created a life that mattered, even if the methods would horrify most people who knew the full truth. Lily Dawson had walked into a storage room broken and bleeding, convinced the world didn't care. She'd walked out under the protection of a man who decided her pain mattered enough to act. And in the years since, she'd learned that justice wasn't always pure or legal or easy. Sometimes it was dark and complicated and required people willing to operate outside the lines. But it was still justice, still meaningful, still worth fighting for. The city sprawled below her window, full of predators and prey and people like her who'd found the courage to shift that balance. Somewhere out there, women were being hurt. Somewhere else, the foundation she'd helped build was working to help them. And here, in this office, in this life she'd chosen, Lily finally felt something she'd thought lost forever that night in the VIP room. Safe, purposeful, loved. The darkness hadn't destroyed her. It had forged her into something stronger, something capable of protecting others from the same fate. And with Victor beside her, complicated, ruthless, absolutely devoted, she knew that whatever came next, whatever battles they'd have to fight, they'd face it together. In the gray spaces where real justice lived. In the complicated truth that sometimes the only way to fight monsters was to have one on your side. In the life they'd built from trauma and choice, and the absolute refusal to let powerful men win. Her mother called as she was packing up for the day, voice bright with excitement about a gallery opening she wanted them to attend. Lily listened to her chatter about art and life and all the experiences she'd thought she'd never have, and felt gratitude so profound it bordered on pain. This was why she'd made the choices she had, why she'd become complicit in methods the law would condemn, why she'd fallen in love with a man who operated outside traditional morality, because her mother was alive, thriving, making plans for a future that wouldn't have existed without Victor's intervention. Because 43 women, now closer to 200, had found justice they'd been denied. Because sometimes the right thing and the legal thing weren't the same, and choosing effectiveness over purity was the only way to create real change. Victor met her in the lobby at 6, still in his suit from meetings, but with his tie loosened and that slight smile that was reserved only for her. He took her hand as they walked out into the Manhattan evening, 2 people among millions, anonymous and unremarkable. "Good day?" he asked. "The best," she said honestly. "Yours?" "Better now." He squeezed her hand. "Ready for the future, Mrs. Hale?" Lily looked at him, this complicated, dangerous, absolutely devoted man who'd changed her life in every possible way, and smiled. "With you? Always." They disappeared into the crowd, just another couple navigating the city's chaos, building a life that balanced darkness with purpose, trauma with healing, violence with love. The investigation was closed. The foundation was thriving. Their future stretched ahead, complicated and beautiful and absolutely theirs. And somewhere in a foreign country, 5 men were learning what consequences felt like. Learning that privilege wasn't permanent. Learning that power could be taken away as easily as it was granted. Learning that the women they'd hurt mattered more than their comfort or their freedom or their lives as they'd known them. Justice, in the only language they'd ever understand. Justice, delivered by people willing to live in the gray. Justice, imperfect but real. And Lily Dawson, who'd once believed the world didn't care about invisible women, had helped make it happen. Had chosen purpose over safety, effectiveness over purity, love over fear. Had become exactly who she needed to be to survive her darkest night and transform it into her greatest strength. The story that had begun in a storage room with blood and tears and crushing despair ended here, in the Manhattan evening, with love and purpose and the absolute certainty that she'd made the right choices. Not the easy ones, not the pure ones, but the right ones for the life she wanted to live and the world she wanted to create. A world where predators faced consequences. Where survivors found support, where invisible women became impossible to ignore. A world she and Victor were building together, one complicated choice at a time, in the gray spaces where real justice lived.